Chapter 759. Nie Tian returned to the auction hall, and the auction continued. Following that, Nie Tian felt much more relaxed. He didn't need to worry about the herbs anymore, and he could bid for anything that he was interested in. The rest of the auction was relatively quiet. Nie Tian's dozen or so spirit cores were sold at a good price, much higher than he had expected. The next item is a 7th grade battle armor. This battle armor is called the Snowstorm Battle Armor, made by a fire armor master. Yu Jiao introduced with a smile, and at the same time, her eyes inadvertently looked towards Nie Tian. 7th grade battle armor, the work of a fire armor master. The crowd's eyes narrowed and revealed unconcealable passion. The fire armor master was extremely famous in the Black Moon Empire, and his name represented the highest level of equipment forging in the empire. As long as they heard this name, the quality of the 7th grade battle armor was guaranteed. Yu Jiao, bullshit! Just as the crowd was getting excited, a sharp voice suddenly rang out. Dao Quangxing's figure stood up once more. He was enraged as he roared. The Blizzard battle armor is Prince Xianqi's personal armor. How could it appear in the auction house? Prince Xianqi's item? Yu Jiao was slightly stunned, and her expression was slightly embarrassed. She suddenly thought of something, and her eyes unconsciously looked towards Nie Tian. When Nie Tian took out the Snowstorm battle armor, Yu Jiao felt that it was somewhat familiar, and it turned out that she had seen it on Prince Xianqi. Yu Jiao was still wondering how Nie Tian could take out a 7th grade battle armor made by a fire armor master. Now, things seemed to have become complicated. Could it be that Nie Tian did something to Prince Xianqi? Yu Jiao, I want to personally inspect this battle armor. Dao Quangxing shouted coldly, and his figure moved, descending on the auction stage. Dao Quangxing, what are you trying to do? Yu Jiao instantly became nervous, and she subconsciously took a step back and shouted, "This is the Yu family's auction hall. Are you trying to rob something?" Rob something? Dao Quangxing's burly figure trembled for a moment before he sneered. The Snow Wind battle armor belongs to Prince Xianqi. For it to appear in the Yu family's auction house for no reason, the Yu family has to give the crown prince an explanation. Yu Jiao's heart sank. She knew that Crown Prince Xianxiao and Prince Xianqi were brothers from the same mother. If the matter regarding the Snowstorm battle armor was not given a satisfactory explanation, Crown Prince Xianxiao would definitely not let it go, and the Yu family would most likely suffer a blow. Ever since the marriage proposal on behalf of Dao Quangxing was rejected, Xianxiao had been looking for an opportunity to suppress the Yu family. If Xianxiao managed to get a hold of their weakness because of a mere armor, the Yu family would be in deep trouble. At this time, many black-robed martial artists swarmed out from the auction hall. They were the hidden guards of the Yu family. However, they did not dare to make a move. After all, Dao Quangxing was the crown prince's man. They could not afford to offend him. Explain what? Right at this moment, a cold voice rang out from the auction hall. In the next moment, a figure soared into the sky, leaping onto the auction stage and standing between Yu Jiao and Dao Quangxing. Nie Tian. Yu Jiao's eyes narrowed when she saw the figure in front of her. Nie Tian's entire body surged with surging sword intent. His sword aura was like a rainbow, forcing Dao Quangxing to retreat repeatedly. Dao Quangxing's eyes narrowed when he sensed the sword intent in the air. He immediately released his saber aura as well. His saber intent bloomed in the air. It was sharp to the extreme, and it pressed down from all directions. Boom, boom, boom. A violent explosion sounded in the air. Sword and saber collided intensely. Nie Tian and Dao Quangxing retreated several steps at the same time. They were actually equally matched. Nie Tian's sword intent was very strong, but he was only at the sword force realm. Dao Quangxing's saber intent was slightly weaker, but he was at the saber spirit realm, which was one realm higher than Nie Tian. Dao Quangxing could not conceal the surprise in his eyes. The other party was clearly only at the 2nd level of Heavenly Evolution realm. How could he fight head-on with him? The crowd was stunned by the scene on the auction stage. No one expected that Nie Tian would not be at a disadvantage when facing Dao Quangxing head-on. Dao Quangxing, don't be too presumptuous. This is the Yu clan's auction house, not the Crown Prince's residence. Yu Jiao was also enraged at this moment. She reprimanded in a cold manner. Dao Quangxing's eyes narrowed, and he sneered. Yu Jiao, as long as you give me a reasonable explanation and tell me where the snowstorm battle armor came from, I will leave immediately. The Yu clan's auction house is only in charge of the auction. We will not reveal the seller's information. Yu Jiao responded coldly. It's me. But just as she finished speaking, Nie Tian took a step forward and stared at Dao Quangxing with a murderous gaze. He said coldly, the person who is auctioning the snowstorm battle armor is me. Is there a problem? Yu Jiao was stunned. She did not know what Nie Tian wanted to do. Dao Quangxing's eyes widened, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He said coldly, the snowstorm battle armor belongs to Prince Xianqi. Why is it in your hands? The crowd was also stunned, and their gazes focused on Nie Tian. Prince Xianqi's item was in Nie Tian's hands. Did the latter do something to the former? Do I have to believe that the snowstorm battle armor belongs to Prince Xianqi? Nie Tian's expression was calm, and he said with a faint smile, let me tell you right now, the snowstorm battle armor belongs to me. It has nothing to do with Prince Xianqi. Dao Quangxing's face twisted, and a terrifying battle intent was released from his body. He said coldly, the snowstorm battle armor was forged by Grandmaster Huijia on behalf of Prince Xianqi. There is only one of it in the world. Where did you get it from? Only one? Nie Tianling laughed, and he looked at the VIP room where Grandmaster Huijia was. He said in a clear voice, the snowstorm battle armor is a gift from Grandmaster Huijia. If you don't believe me, I can ask Grandmaster Huijia to personally testify. Ask Grandmaster Huijia to personally testify? The crowd's eyes trembled, and they looked at the VIP room in disbelief. In the VIP room, Grandmaster Huijia sat upright, and his face was a little pale. Teacher, who is this guy? Why is he biting people? Bai Luo, who was behind Grandmaster Huijia, frowned and asked. Grandmaster Huijia shook his head slightly, and then he smiled bitterly. This guy is really hard to deal with. He always gives me a hard time. As he spoke, Grandmaster Huijia stood up and slowly walked out of the VIP room. It really is Grandmaster Huijia. He came out. When the crowd saw Grandmaster Huijia's face clearly, they almost burst into an uproar. Yu Jiao was also stunned, and her face was full of shock. Grandmaster Huijia really came out. Is he going to prove it to Nie Tian? Grandmaster Huijia, Prince Xianqi asked you to forge the snowstorm battle armor half a year ago. At that time, you only forged one, right? Dao Quangxing looked at Grandmaster Huijia respectfully, and he did not dare to be arrogant. Yes, Grandmaster Huijia nodded and said with a smile, I only forged one snowstorm battle armor at that time. Brat, I knew you were talking nonsense. As soon as Grandmaster Huijia finished speaking, Dao Quangxing revealed his ferocious face, and he wanted to tear Nie Tian into pieces. Chapter 760. Huijia said indifferently. His expression did not change, and his heart did not jump. The crowd was stunned by Huijia's words, and there was no reaction for more than 10 seconds. Who would have thought that someone of Huijia's high status would actually explain for Nie Tian? Huijia personally forged the snowstorm battle armor for Nie Tian. Who is Nie Tian? The crowd's eyes flickered, and they could not wrap their heads around this. Previously, some people thought that Nie Tian was courting death by provoking Dao Quangxing. But now, it seemed that the power behind Nie Tian was not weaker than Crown Prince Xian Shao, and might even be stronger. Dao Quangxing was stunned as well. His mouth was agape, and his throat felt as though it was stuffed with donkey hair. He was speechless. Since Huijia had personally proven that he was the one who gave the snowstorm battle armor to Nie Tian, this matter could not be dragged on any further. Dao Quangxing was not a fool, and he could naturally see some clues. But the key was that Huijia could not be offended. Not to mention him, even Crown Prince Xian Shao would not dare to question Huijia's words. Miss Yu Jiao. At this time, before Dao Quangxing could speak, Huijia continued. What is the starting price for the snowstorm battle armor? This old man wants to buy it back, and I am willing to pay double the starting price for it. How about it? Yu Jiao was stunned for a moment, and then she smiled. Master Hua, since the snowstorm battle armor was forged by you, the Yu family auction house will not reject you. We will buy the snowstorm battle armor from young Master Nietian at double the starting price. It is a gift to Master Hua. Not bad, little ass. You are even better at doing business than Yu Shan. Hua Jia laughed. All right, I will remember this favor. The snowstorm battle armor is mine now. Who asked me to be so sentimental? Hua Jia said as he returned to the VIP lounge. Nietian looked at Hua Jia's figure, and the corners of his mouth curled up. This old fellow was also first-rate when it came to lying, and his way of doing things was also watertight. Hua Jia buying the snowstorm battle armor was obviously to clean up Nietian's mess. If the snowstorm battle armor was bought by someone else, Crown Prince Xian Xiao would definitely know that it was Xian Qi. At that time, Nietian would be in trouble. Old man Hua, thank you for testifying for me. Nietian called out to Hua Jia in a calm and natural manner, as if they were old friends. Fire Armor's figure froze, but he did not turn around. He merely waved his hand and said, You're welcome. After returning to the VIP room, Hua Jia smiled bitterly in his heart and muttered, That little brat is too cunning. He's clearly using this old man. This disciple is truly worrisome. Disciple? Bai Luo, who was at the side, was stunned for a moment. He asked, Nietian is junior? Hua Jia shook his head with a smile and said, Not yet, but very soon. Hua Jia was still very confident, certain that Nietian would lose without a doubt. Just like that, the commotion caused by the snow-wind battle armor calmed down. However, Dao Quanxing's heart was filled with fear towards Nietian, and his eyes were filled with viciousness. Following that, the auction continued. Nietian's heaven-ranked martial art scroll was successfully sold for a sky-high price of 5 million high-grade origin crystals. It was 4 times higher than the 3-legged profound cauldron's price. Nietian felt regret in his heart. If he had auctioned the heaven-ranked martial art scroll earlier, he would have been able to compete with Hua Jia for the 3-legged profound cauldron. Following that, the auction came to an end. There was only one last item left. After a moment, Yu Jiao's figure appeared. She had a smile on her face and said in a sweet voice, Now, let's auction the last item of this auction, the Emperor Weapon Catalog. Emperor Weapon Catalog. The crowd's eyes lit up and focused. Rank 9 spirit tools were known as Emperor tools. Normally, Emperor tools would have a catalog that recorded the refining method, refining materials, and other information about the refining of Emperor tools. It was not an exaggeration to say that the Emperor Weapon Catalog was even more precious than a Rank 9 Emperor tool. This was because a Rank 9 Emperor tool was just a spirit tool. However, if one obtained the Emperor Weapon Catalog, one could refine many Emperor tools. The Emperor Weapon Catalog was the favorite of blacksmiths. At this moment, Nietian's face also sank. He suddenly realized that Hua Jia did not come to the auction for the 3-legged profound cauldron. He came for the Emperor Weapon Catalog. The Emperor Weapon Catalog was a priceless treasure to blacksmiths. However, to Nietian, it was basically useless. Nietian regretted not bidding against Hua Jia for the 3-legged profound cauldron. When the Emperor Weapon Catalog appeared, the crowd's eyes involuntarily looked in Hua Jia's direction. It was obvious that this catalog was specially prepared for Hua Jia. The Emperor Weapon Catalog has been appraised by the auction house's appraiser. It is slightly damaged, but it is not very serious. The auction house will sell it at the price of a high-grade, rank 8 spirit tool. The starting price is 2 million high-grade essence crystals, Yu Jiao said indifferently. Her eyes were also looking at Hua Jia's VIP room. Basically, only blacksmiths would be interested in the Emperor Weapon Catalog. If Hua Jia did not bid, the Emperor Weapon Catalog would not be able to sell. All right, this old man bids 2 million high-grade essence crystals. Hua Jia did not stand on ceremony and directly bid. Unsurprisingly, the Emperor Weapon Catalog fell into Hua Jia's hands. Nietian smiled bitterly and shook his head. In this auction, Huojia was the biggest winner. After the auction ended, the crowd slowly left. Nie Tian went backstage to collect his essence crystals, spiritual materials, and spiritual medicine. Yu Jiao was already waiting for Nie Tian. She handed him an interspatial bag and a gold card. She smiled sweetly and said, "Young Master Nie, your things were auctioned for a total of 7 million high-grade essence crystals. After deducting the auction fee and the essence crystals used to purchase the medicinal materials, you are left with 23 million high-grade essence crystals. All of them have been stored in the gold card." All right. Nie Tian took the gold card and put it away. He then opened the interspatial bag and checked the medicinal materials carefully. He was only relieved when he confirmed that there were no mistakes. In the following month, he would have to rely on these medicinal materials to quickly increase his mental strength. Nie Tian packed his things and left. Yu Jiao did not say much and watched Nie Tian leave. Nie Tian. Yu Jiao looked at the direction where Nie Tian left and murmured the latter's name softly. There was some confusion in her beautiful eyes. At this moment, a middle-aged man in gray appeared behind her. He bowed slightly and said, "Miss, I have the results of the person you asked me to investigate." "Speak." Yu Jiao's eyes flickered. She could not help but feel excited. The man in gray said respectfully, "Nie Tian only appeared in Mystic Moon City today. There was no information about him before this. However, after he came to Mystic Moon City, he did a few big things in Song Dragon Academy." The man in gray told her about how Nie Tian killed Yin Yu and crippled Yin Zong. Yu Jiao was stunned and did not speak for a long time. After a while, Yu Jiao calmed down a little and said, "So, Nie Tian is 19th Highness's man?" "I'm not sure." The man in gray said, "It seems that he does not know 19th Highness. However, 19th Highness did save his life from Yun Hai Chao." "All right, I understand." Yu Jiao waved her hand, signaling for the gray-robed man to leave. However, the look in her eyes became complicated. She really couldn't figure out who Nie Tian was. He was a member of the Yun clan, the 19th Prince, and now he was related to Fire Armor. Chapter 761. After bidding farewell to Yu Jiao, Nie Tian walked out of the auction house without bidding farewell to Huojia. His figure was extremely fast. After a while, he arrived at a secluded corner of the imperial city. Dao Quangxing come out. Nie Tian used his divine sense to check the surroundings. After confirming that there was no one around, his lips curled into a cold smile. He had already sensed that there were a few people following him when he left the auction house. One of them was extremely familiar. It was Dao Quangxing. Initially, Nie Tian didn't want to kill anyone. However, Dao Quangxing was hot on his heels and had even delivered himself to his doorstep. If he continued to run, others would really think that Nie Tian was a pushover. Nie Tian. As soon as Nie Tian spoke, a cold and sharp voice rang out. Then, several figures appeared from the dark with an extremely strong, murderous intent. These people were all heavenly evolution martial artists. Among them, Dao Quangxing was the strongest. He was at heavenly evolution level 5, the spirit of the blade. Dao Quangxing's gaze was cold. His entire body emitted a sharp, murderous intent that enveloped Nie Tian. He smiled sinisterly. "Nie Tian, I didn't expect you to really walk out of the Yu family's auction house. I didn't expect you to really dare to follow me." Nie Tian's expression was indifferent. His voice was so calm that it made one's heart palpitate. Dao Quangxing glared at Nie Tian. The calmer the latter was, the angrier he was. Who was Dao Quangxing? He wanted to do whatever he wanted in the imperial city. Nie Tian had disobeyed him several times in the auction house. Now he was still looking down on him. This made him feel humiliated. "Young Master Quang, this brat is only at heavenly evolution level 2. You don't have to do anything. Our brothers can take care of him." A person behind Dao Quangxing stepped forward and stared at Nie Tian with a disdainful expression. "All right." Dao Quangxing's lips twitched. He took a step back decisively. He had fought with Nie Tian at the auction house earlier. The latter's strength was a little strange, which made him wary. Thus, he decided to let the people around him test Nie Tian's strength. "Brothers, charge." That person sneered and took a step forward. He directly attacked with a palm strike, and a powerful palm energy whizzed out. This guy didn't know that when Nyetian was here, he seemed to have conserved his strength, waiting to surprise Nyetian. Courting death. Nyetian's eyes trembled. Cold, he spat out 2 words. His body shook slightly, and a sword intent suddenly bloomed. A terrifying killing intent swept out. Swoosh! The shadow of the sword shot out, and the person who attacked was sent flying. He screamed and fell to the ground, dead on the spot. What? The others were shocked by the sudden scene, and they didn't know what to do. Without hesitation, Nyetian sent out a few more sword intents. The others didn't even have time to scream before their heads were chopped off. Fresh blood splattered in front of Dao Quanxing. His pupils constricted as the fear in his eyes intensified. He knew that he could kill these people as well, but he might not be able to do it as cleanly as Nyetian. Dao Quanxing, your underlings are gone. It's your turn now. Nyetian's lips twitched, and the disdain in his eyes intensified. His entire body emitted a cold, killing intent. Dao Quanxing wanted to kill him, and he wanted to kill him too. Courting death. Dao Quanxing was completely enraged. He had always been the one looking down on others. Since when was it their turn to look down on him? Third slash of the Annihilation Blade. An enraged voice rang out. A long black blade appeared in Dao Quanxing's hand. With one slash, the space around him tightened. A terrifying sword intent was released, and the entire space was filled with killing intent. 3 shadows of the blade materialized and slashed towards Nyetian. Dao Quanxing's saber intent was domineering and sharp, forceful and ferocious, and it carried an indomitable killing intent. Sensing the terrifying sword intent in the air, Nyetian frowned. The 9 meridians in his body began to churn, and an endless amount of lightning energy gushed out, bathing him in lightning. Lightning Dragon, kill! The corner of Nyetian's mouth twitched slightly as he punched out. 3 enormous lightning dragons appeared in front of him and let out heaven-shaking dragon roars. Dragon might surged out in all directions. Rumble, rumble. The shadows of the blade and the lightning dragons clashed in the air, causing the entire space to tremble. Nyetian and Dao Quanxing both took a few steps back from the impact of the shockwave. Nyetian stabilized his body and smiled bitterly. Without the sky slash sword, I can't unleash the power of my sword intent. Right now, Nyetian didn't have the sky slash sword, so he couldn't unleash the power of his sword intent. He could only use the power of lightning to fight against Dao Quanxing. One had to admit that Dao Quanxing was strong enough. Being at the 5th level of heavenly evolution was nothing. The key was the spirit of the blade. His sword intent was domineering and powerful. Dao Quanxing's gaze froze for a moment, and his eyes instantly turned murderous. Nyetian's strength had exceeded his expectations. The 2 of them continued to fight, and, after several moves, they were still evenly matched. If Nyetian had the sky slash sword, he could use the proud sword art to kill Dao Quanxing. Unfortunately, he didn't have the sky slash sword. I can't continue like this. It'll be bad if I attract the attention of others, Nyetian said in his heart. The killing intent in his heart intensified. He originally didn't want to use his astral soul, but it seemed that he had no choice now. Nyetian, you are very strong, but you have to die since you met me. Dao Quanxing was infuriated that he couldn't even gain the upper hand against Nyetian. He roared in anger, and his expression turned malevolent. 2 surges of terrifying saber intent gushed out from his body, forming a phantom image in the air. Spirit Saber Clone. Nyetian's gaze froze, and he smiled. I didn't expect you to be able to form a Spirit Saber Clone. You are quite knowledgeable. Dao Quanxing's gaze flickered as he coldly laughed. My Spirit Saber Clone is able to unleash the full strength of my original body. If 1 Dao Quanxing couldn't kill you, can't 3 Dao Quanxing do the same? After speaking, Dao Quanxing laughed maniacally, his expression savage. You could try. Nyetian's gaze was calm, without the slightest ripple. The killing intent in his eyes didn't waver in the slightest. Courting death, Dao Guangxing was enraged. The three of them moved at the same time, unleashing three destructive blade intents at the same time. Surging killing intent spread out, and dazzling blade lights lit up half the sky. Like three bolts of lightning, they slashed towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian could feel the killing intent gushing towards him, yet his countenance turned even calmer. His lips twitched as he murmured, "Frigid night, ghostly slaughter." Within his body, the astral soul monument trembled, and momentarily, a vast amount of astral energy gushed out, boundless and endless. Under the darkness of the night, the astral soul monument shone resplendently, containing the coldest and most decisive killing intent. The astral energy revolved around Nie Tian, instantly transforming into the silhouette of a demon that enveloped his entire body. Die! Nie Tian's gaze flickered as he spat out the word die. In the air, a tyrannical killing intent gushed forth, seemingly capable of annihilating and lacerating everything. Chapter 762. Nie Tian's body surged with astral energy as his sixth-ranked astral soul, Frigid Night Ghost Kill, emitted a chilling, killing intent. Boom! Boom! The illusory demon that enveloped Nie Tian trembled as a deafening sound rang out in the air. It sounded like the laughter of a demon, extremely sinister. In the next moment, the horrifying saber intent in the air shone with a bright light and a sharp chill. It directly bombarded the image of the demon. Rumble! Rumble! Explosions rang out in the air as the space around them started to distort. The illusory demon trembled violently, but it still managed to block the saber intent. Dao Guangxing couldn't help but tremble as a look of shock appeared on his face. He didn't expect Nie Tian to have such a terrifying trump card. So it turned out that he wasn't the only one holding back. At this moment, Nie Tian's lips curled up in a cold, killing intent as he spat out three words. It's over. Instantly, the illusory demon transformed into a sinister ghost claw, exuding a sinister killing intent. It was like a tentacle that could tear apart the night sky, destroying everything in its path. Dao Guangxing suddenly felt an intense, killing intent. His eyes narrowed as his heart pounded violently. An unconcealable look of despair could be seen in his eyes. At this moment, the ghost claw slashed down mercilessly. Chi! A light sound pierced through the air. Under the pale moonlight, Dao Guangxing's body was sliced into two. Fresh blood splattered everywhere, creating a bloody scene. Dao Guangxing's mouth was agape, but he couldn't make a single sound. The ghost claw landed on the ground, causing it to explode. The ground within a few hundred meters trembled violently, and half of Dao Guangxing's body was instantly destroyed by the boundless shockwaves. The surging waves of blood only subsided after a long time. Who? Nie Tian stood at his original position, exhaling a mouthful of turbid air. He glanced at Dao Guangxing's corpse as a cold smile appeared on his face. You brought this upon yourself. Dao Guangxing was indeed courting death. He had fought with Nie Tian at the Yu clan's auction house, and he knew that Nie Tian's strength was strange, but he still chased after him. Maybe he himself didn't expect that Nie Tian would actually have the ability to kill him. Dao Guangxing, Crown Prince Xian Zhao's sworn brother, died just like that. Nie Tian raised his hand slightly, and a space ring appeared in his hand. Then, a strand of flames shot out from his fingertip, incinerating Dao Guangxing's corpse into nothingness. There was not a single trace left. In this way, even if someone suspected him, there would be no evidence. Dao Guangxing, the sworn brother of the Crown Prince. He must have some good stuff on him, right? Nie Tian chuckled. With a flash, he disappeared. Nie Tian did not look for an inn. Instead, he went to the outskirts of Mystic Moon City and found an empty space before stopping. Tonight, he would spend the night outside the city. Let's see what good stuff Dao Guangxing has. The corners of his lips curled up as Nie Tian took out the spatial ring he had obtained from Dao Guangxing and sent a strand of his divine sense into it. After a careful search, The ring only contained some essence crystals, spirit cores, and commonly used spirit pills. There was nothing else. A token. Just as Tian was feeling slightly disappointed, he suddenly noticed a golden token. Xiao. Tian saw the words on the golden token and immediately understood that it was Crown Prince Xian Zhao's golden token. Previously, he had obtained a golden token from Prince Xianxiu from Crow. Now, he had the golden tokens of the two strongest princes in the Mystic Moon Empire. Tian put the golden command medallion away, and then discovered another command medallion. The token was black and made of a special material. It seemed to be some kind of sandalwood, and the words Feng Yun were carved on it. Tian took out the token and looked at it for a long time. However, he could not see anything special about it. In the end, he could only put it back. There's still a few hours before daybreak. Let's rest first. Tian looked at the sky and smiled. He sat down cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. This was his first day in the Sumi world, and it was an exciting day. On the first day, not only did he meet many people, but he also had conflicts with many people. And unknowingly, Tian was even involved in the fight for the throne between Crown Prince Xian Xiao and Prince Xianxiu. Tian was not afraid of anything, nor was he worried about anything. He did not care about the meeting with Xianxiu tomorrow. As long as the latter's request was unreasonable, he would not hesitate to reject it. In the battle with Yun Zong, Tian had devoured some energy and his strength had risen to the second stage of heavenly evolution. The power of the stars in his body had awakened 120 billion, and his mental energy had also risen to level 72. At this time, he had to stabilize his strength. In the battle with Dao Quanxing just now, Tian could vaguely feel that his Sword Dao realm would soon rise. He estimated that when he obtained the Sword Absolute Heaven Slash in half a month, his Sword Dao realm would rise to the Sword Spirit realm. Everything was going well. He just had to wait to raise Xian Miao Miao's mental energy. Tian looked inside his body. The 9 dragon veins had become even stronger. The power of lightning flowed within them, and there seemed to be layers of electric currents surging on them. These electric currents represented a strong life force, combined with the true meaning of heavenly evolution. As long as Tian was not fatally injured, he could instantly recover. Tian then checked the Spirit Dragon ring. Many of the Spirit Dragon seals had been unlocked, and the green dragon that had been released should be more than 10 meters long. However, this kind of power was still too weak compared to the entire Spirit Dragon seal. It was not worth mentioning at all. After checking the Spirit Dragon seal, Tian's divine sense entered the star domain. The domain origin formation slowly operated, roaring without stopping. At this time, the 9-star rivers were sparkling with starlight and surging with life force. The power of the stars in the first star rivers had been completely awakened, and the primal star stones that connected heaven and earth shone dazzlingly. The power of 100 billion stars in the first star rivers has been completely awakened. The full appearance of the heaven-shrouding totem has been revealed, Tian murmured, but his eyes were fixed on the second star rivers, flickering with undisguised heat. He had not seen the appearance of the second star rivers, and he was ready to take a look. His divine sense moved up the primal star stones, and Tian arrived at the second star rivers. How spectacular! Wherever his eyes landed, the star rivers were dazzling, shining brightly. The power of the stars in the second star rivers was obviously stronger than the first. Although he had only awakened the power of 20 billion stars, he could see the vastness of the entire star rivers. Tian felt the surging stars around him, as if he was the ruler of the endless universe, and there was a feeling of transcendence. He could vaguely feel that obtaining the primal star stones seemed to be some kind of mission, and he was the one chosen by the great Tao of heaven and earth. However, Tian did not believe in fate, and only believed in himself. Tian looked at the star rivers above his head, and his eyes gradually became blurred. In his eyes, all the starlight gradually connected and became a whole existence. Tian saw the power of the stars, connected from head to tail, like a long dragon, perfectly connected together. His vision went further and further, and the entire Star River spread out in his vision. Chapter 763. Nyetian stared at the scene in front of him, his whole person sluggish for more than 10 seconds, and it took a long time for him to react. The second layer of the heavenly river is not a totem. Nyetian muttered to himself. The shock in his eyes still did not dissipate. He originally thought that the 9 heavenly rivers should be 9 star totems. But when the second layer of the heavenly river spread out in front of him, what appeared was not a totem, but an eye, right? It was an eye. A huge eye spread out above the galaxy. This eye was too big, and all the stars were connected together. The power of 20 billion stars only formed the outline of the giant eye. By the starry sky. Suddenly, Nyetian shouted a name. This was the information that suddenly appeared in his mind. So this eye was called the Eye of the Starry Sky. Nyetian stood in the eye of the starry sky, feeling the ancient shock from the vast sky. The Eye of the Starry Sky stood majestically at the top of the galaxy, like the eye of a god, overlooking everything and seeing through everything. Nyetian's face was filled with horror, and it took a long time for him to gradually calm down. The Eye of the Starry Sky, since it exists in the second layer of the galaxy, then its power should be greater than the sky shrouding totem. How can I use its power? Nyetian muttered to himself, his eyes revealing doubt and excitement. The second layer of the galaxy was much stronger than the first layer, so the Eye of the Starry Sky was more terrifying than the sky shrouding totem. However, Nyetian did not know how to use the power of the Eye of the Starry Sky. Boom! At this moment, the domain origin array suddenly roared, and then the raw star stone shook violently. The power of the stars on the stone suddenly reacted and suddenly lit up incomparably bright. Nyetian looked at the raw star stone and saw a pattern engraved on the stone. It was the Eye of the Starry Sky. The raw star stone was divided into 9 layers, corresponding to the 9 layers of the galaxy. So it was not surprising that the Eye of the Starry Sky appeared on the raw star stone. However, the next moment, the raw star stone suddenly released dazzling starlight and unexpectedly rushed towards Nyetian, overwhelming and unstoppable. Ah! Nyetian turned pale with fright and couldn't help but cry out in alarm. However, he couldn't control his body at all. All the starlight condensed in the air, turning into rays of white starlight that flowed into Nyetian's eyes. Nyetian wanted to close his eyes, but he couldn't. His soul and body seemed to be controlled by an invisible force, refusing to listen to his commands. Ah! The dazzling starlight rushed over, and everything in front of Nyetian disappeared. There was only light, endless starlight. As the light seeped into his eyes, Nyetian felt a massive force tearing at his eyes. His eyeballs lost all sensation. In the next moment, he seemed to have entered another world. Colorful light surged around him, and he was in the center of the light, like a black hole that absorbed everything. Boundless light surged over and entered his body. His limbs, his veins, every inch of his skin, and every inch of his bones were all surging with starlight. Nyetian felt as if his body was completely composed of light, but at the same time, it felt like flesh and blood. This feeling was very wonderful, and it gave him an indescribable sense of comfort. After an unknown amount of time, the surrounding light quickly dissipated, all of it pouring into Nyetian's body. When all the light disappeared, Nyetian's divine sense returned, and his eyes regained their senses. What appeared in front of him was still the raw star stone, the second layer of the Star River, and nothing seemed to have changed. Nyetian was puzzled. He blinked his eyes, and only then did he feel that his eyes had undergone a strange change. He felt that the way he saw everything had completely changed, as if everything in front of him had no secrets to speak of. Nyetian was startled by this feeling, and his divine sense moved, coming out of the Star River domain. He jumped to his feet and suddenly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, Nyetian clearly felt the surrounding mountains and earth tremble. And the more he concentrated, the more the mountains and earth trembled. This was a shuddering feeling, as if the mountains and earth felt fear in front of Nietion's eyes. This! Nietion was so surprised that he couldn't speak. Even the world was trembling in his eyes. This was too terrifying. Phew! 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 Nietion exhaled 3 mouthfuls of turbid air, and his expression calmed down a little. He carefully sensed his eyes and actually saw the second layer of the Star River in his eyes. At this time, he completely understood that the starry sky eyes of the second layer of the Star River had merged with his eyes in a wonderful way. At this time, his eyes were the starry sky eyes. No wonder the mountains and earth trembled under his eyes. The starry sky eyes overlooked everything, and even heaven and earth felt fear. The shock in Nietion's heart could not subside for a long time. The raw star stones were too terrifying beyond his imagination. This was only the second layer of the Star River, but the starry sky eyes that made heaven and earth tremble had appeared. Then what kind of terrifying things would appear in the third layer, the fourth layer, all the way to the 9th layer of the Star River? At this time, Nietion felt like he was in a dream. After a long time, Nietion finally calmed down. He began to try to restrain the terrifying aura in his eyes, and after several practices, he could freely shrink and retract his eyes. Nietion felt that his eyes had made a qualitative leap in all aspects, including vision, insight, reaction, and so on. He looked into the distance and could clearly see things tens of kilometers away. With his spiritual force, it was effortless to perceive everything within 5 kilometers, but if it was beyond 5 kilometers, he would need to concentrate, and 10 kilometers away, he would not be able to perceive anything. But now, he did not use spiritual force and only relied on his eyes. He could see everything tens of kilometers away. Moreover, he could ignore obstacles. Nietion stretched out his palm, placed it in front of him, and actually saw the blood vessels in his palm. Gulp! Nietion could not help but gulp, and murmured, "The ability of the starry sky eyes is too abnormal. In this way, no one has any secrets in front of me. Master, your eyes are too scary." Suddenly, the corpse demon lord seemed to notice something, and exclaimed, "Hee, if used for peeping, it is simply invincible." The corpse demon lord and Nietion had signed a soul blood contract, and he could perceive some of Nietion's abilities in reverse. Nietion was speechless. Using the starry sky eyes to peep, this was too much of a waste. If the raw star stones had a mind of their own, they would probably go crazy with anger after hearing the corpse demon lord's words. Awoo! At this time, a bird suddenly sounded in the sky, piercing the silence of the night sky. Huh! Nietion suddenly raised his head, and his pupils shrank slightly. A sharp spiritual force whistled like lightning, piercing the flying bird in the sky. Chapter 764. Nietion looked at the flying bird on the ground, his mouth open wide, and he was stunned for a long time. He just inadvertently used his gaze to lock onto the flying bird, and actually killed it directly. Mental attack. These words appeared in Nietion's mind, and he had a stunned look. It's actually a mental attack. The flying bird was killed by Nietion just now, not because Nietion's eyes of the starry sky released ocular power, but because he released mental power. It was a mental attack that directly frightened the flying bird's divine soul, causing it to lose control of its body and fall to the ground dead. Nietion really did not expect that the eyes of the starry sky could actually release a mental attack. He had once come into contact with the Alchemist Association's Pillheart Soulstone, and he himself was also an alchemist, so he naturally knew the horror of mental attacks. Imagine 2 martial artists of comparable strength. If one of them suffered a blow to the divine soul at a critical moment and suddenly became absent-minded, it was absolutely a fatal blow, enough to determine life and death. Huh! Nietion let out a long breath of turbid air and muttered, "The power of the eyes of the starry sky is too terrifying. I have to use it cautiously in the future." Using the eyes of the starry sky just now made his spirit feel a little tired too. This is a carrier pigeon. At this time, Nietion suddenly saw that the flying bird on the ground was actually a carrier pigeon. Nietian raised his finger and got a piece of paper in his hand. Opening it, a line of words was written on it. Wind and Cloud Mantra. 2 months later, Wind and Cloud Forbidden Land. N. Nietian frowned slightly, not understanding what this wind and cloud mantra meant. He did not think too much either. The most crucial thing now was nothing else but to familiarize himself with the Eyes of the Starry Sky's ability as soon as possible. In the following time, Nietian practiced controlling the Eyes of the Starry Sky in the Chaos original coffin. The Eyes of the Starry Sky was too terrifying. If it lost control at a critical moment, it would hurt others and hurt oneself. After several hours, the horizon revealed a fish belly white, and the sun rose from the east. Nietian stood up, but his spirit was somewhat dispirited. A night of bitter cultivation, he was practicing the Eyes of the Starry Sky. The current him could at least guarantee that there would not be an incident of mistakenly killing a flying bird like before. The Eyes of the Starry Sky's mental attack was too terrifying. Nietian named it as Absolute Shudder. This name was very domineering, and it didn't really live up to its name. Nietian discovered that the spiritual force attack of the Eye of the Starry Sky was closely linked to the power of the stars in the second layer of the galaxy, and the power of the attack was not very strong yet. If the opponent was as determined as Nietian, they could basically ignore this level of mental attack. However, Nietian believed that as the power of the stars continued to awaken, the absolute tremor would become more and more terrifying. After getting up, Nietian did not delay any further and directly entered Mystic Moon City. Not long after, his figure appeared in the Blue Dragon Academy. At this moment, the sky had just turned bright. Many people in the Song Dragon College had already woken up to cultivate and train. Heaven rewards the diligent. This saying was true. No matter how talented you are, if you can't persevere in your cultivation, you are destined to not have great achievements. After a while, a figure appeared in Nietian's sight. It was Xian Miao. At this time, Xian Miao had changed into a purple dress with a pink ribbon around her waist, which set off the girl's graceful body vividly. Nietian glanced around, but saw a graceful and peerless body. Even if he deliberately restrained the ability of the Eyes of the Starry Sky, it could still see through other people's clothes. Nietian still needed more practice to be able to completely control the Eyes of the Starry Sky and achieve true contraction and contraction freely. Inadvertently catching a glimpse of the girl's body, Nietian turned slightly red, and his eyes moved away in a panic. "Brother Nietian, you've been waiting for a long time, right?" Xian Miao walked over with light footsteps and greeted Nietian excitedly. She was just worried that Nietian would not appear, who knew that the latter was already waiting for her. "I just arrived," Nietian replied, not daring to look at Xian Miao. "Brother Nietian, what's wrong with you? Your face is so red." Xian Miao walked to Nietian's side and could not help but worry when she saw the latter's red face. "I'm fine." Nietian waved his hand and said hurriedly, "Let's go. Grandmaster Huijia is still waiting for us." "Okay." Xian Miao nodded obediently and followed behind Nietian, but still whispered, "Brother Nietian won't be sick, right?" Nietian shook his head with a bitter smile, and the corpse demon king's wretched laughter could be heard from the chaotic original coffin. Soon, the two arrived at the Craftsman's Guild. Nietian looked at the cauldron-shaped building in front of him and smiled softly. The Craftsman's Guild is no worse than the Alchemist's Guild. Xian Miao nodded her little head, but there was a look of worry on her face, and she said, "Will Grandmaster Huijia really accept me as a disciple?" "Lass, don't worry. That old fellow will definitely not go back on his words." Nietian smiled faintly and walked up confidently. Huijia did not look very reliable, but he did things with propriety. There were already people waiting for Nietian and Xian Miao in the Craftsman's Guild. The two were led by a deacon to the inner hall of the guild. "Bratanye, you're here." As soon as they arrived at the inner hall, Huijia's figure appeared. It seemed that he was really waiting for Nietian and Xian Miao. Behind Huijia stood a man in white. It was Bai Luo, who had appeared at the Yu family's auction previously. Nietian looked at Bai Luo and was quite surprised. The latter was actually a third level of the heaven-human realm martial artist. It seemed that Bai Luo was not only Hua Jia's disciple, but also his guard. Old man Hua, when will the apprenticeship ceremony begin? Nie Tian did not stand on ceremony with Hua Jia and asked directly. When Bai Luo heard how Nie Tian addressed Hua Jia, he frowned and seemed to be a little unhappy. Nie Tian ignored him and pretended not to see. Hua Jia's temper was not bad, and he was not a rigid and harsh person. He was quite similar to Gu Yi. Don't be anxious. The person I invited has not arrived yet. Hua Jia smiled and said to Bai Luo, who was beside him, Bai Luo, bring the little girl to familiarize herself with the guild. In the future, she will be your junior sister. Junior sister? Bai Luo was stunned and looked at Xian Miao. He then smiled and said, Little junior sister, please follow me. Bai Luo originally thought that today's apprenticeship ceremony was prepared for Nie Tian. He did not expect it to be prepared for Xian Miao. Brat, let's talk. After Bai Luo and Xian Miao left, Hua Jia pushed open the door and walked in. Nie Tian followed. Hua Jia signaled for Nie Tian to sit down, and his expression became slightly ugly. He picked up a cup of tea and took a sip. He shook his head and sighed, saying, I've already helped you destroy the snowstorm battle armor. Tell me honestly, what did you do to Prince Xianqi? It's good that I destroyed it. Nie Tian smiled faintly and teased him, Old man Hua, I didn't expect you to be so meticulous. Don't change the topic. Hua Jia was not that easy to brush off. He said in a deep voice, What did you do to Prince Xianqi? After speaking, Hua Jia drank a big mouthful of tea. I killed him. Nie Tian's lips curled into a helpless smile, and he said in a deep voice. Chapter 765. Upon hearing that Nie Tian had killed Prince Xianqi, Fire Armor spat out a mouthful of water before he could even swallow it. He stared at Nie Tian with disbelief written all over his face. Nie Tian, you really killed Prince Xianqi? Hua Jia was stunned for a few seconds. He gulped, still in disbelief. So what? What's there to be surprised about? Nie Tian said with a faint smile. He didn't seem to take this matter to heart at all. So what? Hua Jia almost shouted out loud, but then he realized that he had lost his composure. He lowered his voice and frowned, saying, Little brat Nie, you make it sound easy. Although Mysterious Fantasy isn't a good person, he is still a member of the Black Moon Imperial family. Furthermore, he is Crown Prince Xian Zhao's brother. If you kill him, Xian Zhao will never forgive you. Even if Xianqi's position among the princes wasn't high, he was still a prince. How could he be killed so easily? Hua Jia was speechless at Nie Tian's attitude. He killed a prince and acted like nothing happened. This brat's brain was either caught in a door or kicked by a donkey. With a faint smile, Nie Tian picked up the teacup and took a sip. Old man Hua, as long as you and I don't tell anyone, who will know? Up until now, only Nie Tian, Xian Miao Miao, and Hua Jia knew about Xianqi's death. Hua Jia was speechless. Little brat, do you think the Black Moon Imperial family is stupid? Xianqi's death can't be covered up. Not to mention what happened at the Yu family auction house yesterday. With Crown Prince Xian Zhao's shrewdness, he will definitely blame Xianqi's death on you. You can't deny it. Not denying it is not bad. Nie Tian laughed and said, Xian Zhao doesn't have any evidence anyway, so he can't kill me directly. Even if he comes to kill me, there will be people who won't agree. Who won't agree? Who in the Black Moon Empire dares to go against Xian Zhao? Hua Jia was stunned for a moment before he asked, You're talking about Xian Xiu? In the entire Xianyu Empire, there was only one person who dared to openly oppose Xian Xiao, Xian Xiu. The two were brothers in name, but in reality, they were mortal enemies. Looking at Hua Jia's reaction, Nie Tian knew that Hua Jia didn't know what had happened at Song Dragon Academy yesterday. Nie Tian laughed and said, Old Hua, I have an appointment with Xian Xiu at the Craftsman's Guild. You don't mind, do you? Fire Armor was speechless. His expression was clearly saying, Does it matter if I mind? At this time, Fire Armor sighed and took a sip of tea. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked, Did that Dao Quanxing cause trouble for you last night? Seeing that Nie Tian was fine, Hua Jia felt that Dao Quanxing probably hadn't gone to look for Nie Tian. I killed him. Nie Tian didn't beat around the bush this time and said directly, "What?" Hua Jia almost jumped up. His old eyes were wide open. If his eye sockets were a little bigger, his eyeballs would have popped out. Old Hua, you are also considered a big shot. Don't be so jumpy all the time. It doesn't suit your status. Nie Tian smiled lightly and said with his lips curled. This time, Hua Jia was really speechless. His old face was stiff, and it took him a while to recover. Nie Tian was really a hornet's nest. Not only did he kill Xian Qi, he also killed Dao Quanxing. If Xian Xiao knew the truth, he would definitely want to tear Nie Tian into pieces. His own brother and sworn brother had both died in the hands of Nie Tian. It would be strange if Xian Xiao wasn't angry. Suddenly, Hua Jia felt that taking Nie Tian as a disciple might not be a good thing. This kid had just arrived at Xianyu City, and he had already started killing people crazily. Moreover, the people he killed were all big shots. Who knew if one day, Nie Tian would even dare to kill the emperor of Xianyu City? That would be terrible. But Nie Tian's talent was really too good. Hua Jia really couldn't bear to part with such a monstrous genius. Old Hua, I have something to discuss with you. Just as Hua Jia's thoughts were running wild, Nie Tian suddenly chuckled and looked at Hua Jia with a malicious expression. Hua Jia's hair stood on end from Nie Tian's stare. Goosebumps rose all over his body. He said in a low voice, "Stinking brat, what are you up to this time?" Hua Jia really couldn't say it out loud. He originally thought that he had hooked up a good disciple with a mysterious sky iron. But after today, he felt that he had unknowingly boarded Nie Tian's pirate ship. "Why are you so nervous?" Nie Tian chuckled and said, "Master Hua, I want to see the pill cauldron you bought yesterday. Is that okay?" "You're interested in that pill cauldron?" Hua Jia was startled, but he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. This time, Nie Tian was finally serious. Nie Tian was an alchemist, so it wasn't strange for him to be interested in a pill cauldron. Hua Jia didn't decline. He directly took out a pill cauldron from his interspatial ring. It was the three-legged profound cauldron. When the three-legged profound cauldron appeared, Nie Tian's eyes lit up. Observing the three-legged profound cauldron at such a close distance, Nie Tian felt an ancient and vast aura. Carefully sensing the profound cauldron, Nie Tian felt a strong, true intent of tools and alchemy. The two true intents were endless and vast, giving people a feeling that they couldn't be touched. Nie Tian's consciousness moved in an attempt to sense the aura within the profound cauldron, but he was repelled by a strong force. His body trembled, and he actually took a few steps back, almost falling. At this moment, his eyes surged with a flash of starlight. There was a strong force hidden within the three-legged profound cauldron. It was extremely strange, and even with Nie Tian's strong mental strength, his soul was almost injured. Hua Jia snickered and said, "Kid, there's a seal in this profound cauldron that seals the two true intents. This old man was almost injured by this seal yesterday." "Seal?" Nie Tian frowned slightly. His expression suddenly changed, and he said in shock, "A mental seal. To be able to seal the powerful, true intent of tools and alchemy, it had to be a mental seal. Ordinary seals were formed with Yuan Li, but a mental seal was formed with mental strength. Ordinary sealers couldn't undo a mental seal. Only people who were proficient in mental attacks could break the seal." "Yes." Hua Jia nodded slightly and laughed bitterly. "I can't undo the mental seal. This pill cauldron can be considered a waste. It can only be used as a decoration." Just as Hua Jia finished speaking, Nie Tian suddenly raised his head. His eyes narrowed slightly, and suddenly a vast mental strength surged out. An invisible mental deterrent enveloped Hua Jia. Ah! The sudden mental oppression caught Hua Jia off guard, and he cried out in shock. Nie Tian quickly retracted his eyes, and the absolute trembling stopped. "This is..." Hua Jia was still in shock, and he stared at Nie Tian in astonishment. After a long time, he finally said 4 words, "Mental attack." In that instant, he felt his soul tremble, and his mind was lost. Despair actually grew in his heart. Fortunately, his mental strength was high enough. He only lost his mind for a moment, but that feeling was unforgettable. Chapter 766. Nietion narrowed his eyes. His mind was also slightly exhausted. In order to shock Huojia, he had mobilized all the power of the stars in the eye of starry sky. His mind was inevitably exhausted. Mind power was different from elemental energy. It was easy to exhaust it, and it would take a long time to recover. Elder Hua, I have a suggestion. I don't know if you're willing to accept it. Nietion nodded solemnly. Speak. Huojia's eyes flickered. Just now, Nietion had shown his mind power attack in front of him. It was obviously not to show off. He must have some idea. Nietion paused and said, I think I can break the mind power seal in the cauldron, but it will take time. I want to take the cauldron. Once the mind power seal is broken, the tool's path and alchemy path will all belong to you. I want this cauldron. Nietion did not care about the tool's path and alchemy path. He only wanted the three-legged profound cauldron. He could feel that there must be a huge secret hidden in the three-legged profound cauldron. Just the totems and runes outside the cauldron made Nietion excited. Huojia saw Nietion's solemn face and knew that the latter was not joking. He did not hesitate and nodded in agreement. He was not a fool. Of course, he could see that Nietion had a special liking for the cauldron. He must know what was hidden in the cauldron. However, it was useless for him to leave the cauldron. It could only be used as a decoration. It was better to let Nietion take it. As long as he could obtain the intent in the cauldron, the 1,000,000 upper-grade essence crystals would be worth it. He believed that Nietion was not the kind of person who would go back on his word. Thank you. Nietion breathed a sigh of relief. He was really worried that Huojia would not agree. Nietion did not stand on ceremony and kept the cauldron. At this moment, Huojia frowned. He suddenly felt that since Nietion knew mind power attacks, he might really be able to create a miracle and greatly increase the mysterious mind power. If that was the case, wouldn't his plan to take Nietion as his disciple be ruined? Huojia shook his head slightly and smiled bitterly in his heart. Nietion, if you can really help that girl raise her psychic power to level 8 within a month, this old man will be convinced by you. Subsequently, the two of them continued to discuss some matters. Nietion inquired about the various forces in the Black Moon Empire and had a rough idea of what was going on. After a while, Bai Luo and Xian Miao Miao appeared again. Teacher, the people from the 4 great clans have arrived. Can we start the ceremony of acknowledging a teacher? Bai Luo bowed slightly and said respectfully, Good. Fire Armor nodded with a smile. Take the little girl to change her clothes. I'll be right there. Yes, Bai Luo agreed and left with Xian Miao Miao again. People from the 4 families. Nietion chuckled and said, Elder Hua is indeed flawless. He had asked Huojia to hold the ceremony for Xian Miao Miao, but he did not expect Huojia to invite the people from the 4 families. This was out of Nietion's expectation. However, this was a good thing. Now, everyone in the Black Moon City would know that Xian Miao Miao was Huojia's disciple. This way, no one would dare to do anything to Xian Miao Miao and the Xian family fortress. Huojia prepared for a while and changed into a craftsman's robe. His expression also became more solemn. The two of them left the room and went to the guild hall. At this moment, the guild hall was filled with people. Not only did Huojia invite the people from the 4 families, but he also invited other influential forces in the Black Moon City. Master Huojia is accepting a new disciple. I wonder which young genius is so lucky to be favored by Master Huojia. Needless to say, it must be a craftsman genius. If I'm not mistaken, it must be a disciple of the 4 families. I've never heard of a craftsman genius appearing in the 4 families recently. Don't worry, we'll find out soon. The crowd discussed spiritedly, waiting for Huojia to appear. In the center of the crowd stood 4 people. Nietion recognized 3 of them, Qi Yui, Yin Haichao, and Yu Jiao. The last person was a middle-aged man, standing close to Yin Haichao. These 4 people were sent by the 4 families of Qi Lu, Yun, and Yu. The middle-aged man was from the Lu family, Lu Fei Yuan. It was rare to see people from the four families gathered at the same time. They're here. At this time, Huijia and Nie Tian's figures appeared, immediately attracting everyone's attention. The people from the four families looked over and saw the face standing behind Huijia. Three of them let out a surprised voice at the same time. Qi Yuyi, Yun Haichao, and Yu Jiao did not expect Nie Tian to appear at this kind of occasion. The three of them had the same question in their minds. Master Huijia's new disciple is Nie Tian? From the looks of it, it seemed that Nie Tian was Huijia's new disciple. Yun Haichao's heart sank, and his expression became extremely ugly. He did not expect that Nie Tian would be related to Huijia. Xianxiu protecting Nie Tian was already troublesome enough. Adding Huijia to the mix, there was basically no hope of avenging Yunzong and Yunyu. Qi Yuyi's eyes were also very complicated. He did not know why Prince Xianxiu would look for Nie Tian, but if Nie Tian became Huijia's disciple, everything would be different. Only Yu Jiao was stunned at first, but then she revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. She was very happy for Nie Tian. At this time, Huijia and Nie Tian walked over. Huijia's gaze swept across the crowd, and he smiled kindly. "Thank you for coming, everyone. I can't thank you enough." The people from the four families walked up and exchanged greetings. Yu Jiao deliberately looked at Nie Tian a few more times, but the latter only avoided her, which made her a little happy. She did not know that Nie Tian did not dare to look at her, because if he did, he would see her whole face. "I must practice my starya more. I won't dare to look at women in the future," Nie Tian muttered in his heart. It was fine if he looked at men, but it was not suitable for women, and Nie Tian did not want to take advantage of them. "Young Master Nie Tian, congratulations on becoming Grandmaster Huijia's disciple." Yu Jiao took a step forward, and her full chest trembled, causing Nie Tian's face to turn red. Nie Tian hurriedly shifted his attention and only looked at Yu Jiao's face. He said, "Miss Yu, you misunderstand. I am not the one who wants to become an apprentice, but a friend of mine." Staring at her face, Nie Tian felt much better. "You are not the one who wants to become an apprentice." Yu Jiao was slightly stunned. She immediately realized that she had overreacted, and she pursed her lips into a smile. When Qi Yuyi and Yun Haichao, who were at the side, heard Nie Tian's words, their faces relaxed. After a while, Bai Luo appeared with a mysterious aura. Huijia briefly introduced Bai Luo, and the apprenticeship ceremony was ready to begin. "It's so lively. It seems that I have come at a bad time." At this time, a hearty laughter rang out. As the laughter faded, an imposing figure appeared. Chapter 767. Nie Tian heard a familiar voice and looked over. It was none other than the 19th prince of Xianyu Empire, Xianxiu. This guy really came at the right time. Nie Tian smiled bitterly. Xianxiu seemed to have planned this. He came just when Xian Miao was about to become his disciple. What a disappointment. Xianxiu walked over, and the crowd automatically made way for him. Huijia looked at Xianxiu and was startled. Then, he remembered that Xianxiu was here for Nie Tian. "Grandmaster Huijia, congratulations. You've accepted another disciple." Xianxiu walked over and congratulated Huijia. Then, he looked at Xian Miao and said with a kind face, "I'm very happy that Grandmaster Huijia likes my sister." "Sister?" The crowd's eyes narrowed and their hearts trembled. Huijia's new disciple was a member of the royal family and Xianxiu's sister. However, everyone here was a reputable figure in Xianyu City. They had never seen Princess Xian Miao before. Upon hearing Xianxiu's way of addressing her, Nie Tian couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Xianxiu was really shameless. When Xian Miao was penniless, he didn't call her sister. However, this guy couldn't be wrong. After all, Xian Miao was a member of the royal family, and they shared the same blood. Xian Miao was embarrassed and didn't know what to say. She just nodded. Huijia glanced at Xian Miao and seemed a little unhappy. Then, he laughed and said, "19th Highness, it is a joyous occasion for your younger sister to become my disciple. As her elder brother, shouldn't you express your gratitude?" Xianxiu was shameless, and Huijia wasn't easy to deal with. He didn't call her sister for nothing. At least, he had to make Xian Xiu pay. Since Xian Xiu called her sister in front of so many people, of course, he couldn't take out something shabby. Xian Xiu's eyes twitched, and he laughed dryly. Grandmaster Huojia is right. In front of so many people, Xian Xiu, as her brother, had to pay a lot. If he casually took out something to deal with it, he would lose a lot of face. The ring on Xian Xiu's hand flashed, and a spirit pill appeared in his palm. The moment the spirit pill appeared, the fragrance of the pill filled the air, and the smell of the pill assailed the nostrils. A grade 8 spirit pill. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He immediately sensed that the pill in Xian Xiu's hand was indeed a grade 8 spirit pill. An 8th grade spirit pill wasn't low in quality and could be said to be priceless. Xian Xiu raised the spirit pill in his hand and felt his heart wrench in pain. However, he still wore a smile on his face and said, "This is an 8 Revolutions Foundation pill. It's a birthday gift from Master Jiaguang to this king. A Heaven Evolution Realm warrior can raise their cultivation by at least 3 levels if they consume it. I will now give it to Princess Meow Meow." After that, Xian Xiu sent the 8 Revolutions Foundation pill to Xian Meow Meow. A level 8 spirit pill personally refined by Grandmaster Jiaguang. This gift is so valuable. The eyes of the crowd burned with passion, and they couldn't help but exclaim. Jiaguang, the president of the Alchemist Guild, had the same status as Huijia in the Black Moon Empire. "Your Highness, this gift is too precious. I can't accept it." Xian Miao Miao was shocked and waved her hands. She never dreamed that one day, Prince Xian Xiu would give her such a precious gift. "Girl, take it." Before Xian Xiu could speak, Huijia said directly, "You can't refuse the 19th Highness's gift." Xian Miao Miao's little face stiffened. Seeing Huijia's serious face, she had no choice but to take the spirit pill. "That's right." Huijia chuckled and said, "I thank the 19th Highness on behalf of the girl. Let's continue with the apprenticeship ceremony." Huijia waved his hand and gestured for the ceremony to continue. "Wait." At this moment, a domineering voice was heard. It was powerful and forceful, with a strong, oppressive aura. "Huh?" The eyes of the crowd trembled violently. Who was this person? How dare he be so arrogant on such an occasion? Was he tired of living? Someone actually came to mess up Huijia's apprenticeship ceremony. This person was simply courting death. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice. A burly and domineering figure appeared and stepped into the air. 2 deep footprints were left on the ground, and the surrounding space shook. With the appearance of this person, an enormous pressure spread out from the void, shaking everyone's hearts. The person walked through the air step by step, leaving a row of deep footprints on the ground. The enormous pressure also became more intense. The crowd felt that it was difficult to breathe. Their chests were oppressed, and their breathing became heavy and rapid. Many people's faces were slightly flushed. "Huh?" Nie Tian looked at the figure in the air and also felt a strong pressure. However, he was strong enough and did not pose any threat. The person who came seemed to be around 30 years old. His facial features were handsome and well-defined, making him look resolute and domineering. A layer of faintly discernible mystic sand surged around him, releasing a chilling aura. It was very strange. At this moment, many people saw the face of the person who came. Their expressions immediately stiffened, and unconcealable fear appeared on their faces. "Huh?" When Xian Xiu saw the person in the air, the corner of his eyes twitched violently. His expression was twisted, making him look somewhat ferocious. However, he hid it well. The gloominess on his face disappeared in a flash and was replaced by respect. He bowed slightly and said in a clear voice, "Royal brother, long time no see. I didn't expect you to come here and join the fun." "Royal brother?" Hearing how Xian Xiu addressed the person, Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He was quite surprised. Could he be Crown Prince Xian Xiao? There was only one person in the entire Black Moon Empire who dared to be so arrogant in front of Huijia and the others, and that was Crown Prince Xian Xiao. Nie Tian immediately confirmed that the person who came was definitely Crown Prince Xian Xiao. This guy was very famous. He was one of the 9 demons of the Sumi world, the crown prince of the Black Moon Empire. He was overbearing, fierce, and cruel. Nie Tian did not expect that Crown Prince Xian Xiao would also appear. Crown Prince Xian Xiao and Prince Xian Xiao, the 2 most powerful princes of the Black Moon Empire, met. This was going to be interesting. Of these 2 people, one was overbearing and the other was gloomy. Both were not good people. Your Royal Highness, what brings you here? Huijia looked at the figure in the air and laughed strangely. He did not hide his displeasure at all. Others might be afraid of Xian Xiao, but he was not. Xian Xiao controlled his whole body's pressure perfectly, and it disappeared in front of Huijia. No matter how arrogant he would definitely not dare to provoke Huijia. Crown Prince Xian Xiao had been in seclusion for 2 years. When he came out this time, his appearance had changed a little. So many people did not recognize him at first. After Huijia confirmed Xian Xiao's identity, the crowd could not help but retreat, fear in their eyes. Xian Xiao was too overbearing, and no one dared to provoke him. Grandmaster Huijia, I have some matters to attend to, so I came uninvited. Xian Xiao's figure landed, and his aura was slightly restrained. There was also some respect in his tone. He was already giving Huijia a lot of face by doing this. Huijia frowned slightly, and his heart sank. Is this guy here for Nie Tian? Chapter 768. Nie Tian looked at Xian Xiao and suddenly remembered that Huijia had said that Xian Xiao was the top genius of the Xianhua princes and had a very powerful bloodline seal in him. Before Xian Miao Miao appeared, he was the top genius of the royal family. It was not surprising that he could tell that Xian Miao Miao was from the royal family. Yes. Xian Miao Miao nodded lightly, not daring to look at Xian Xiao. Xian Xiao was silent for a while before a stiff smile appeared on his lips. Since you're a member of the royal family, you're my sister. Since you're Master Huijia's disciple, I must show my gratitude. Upon hearing Xian Xiao's words, Nie Tian immediately realized that Yun Haichao must have told him what had happened. Since Xian Xiao had expressed his gratitude, Xian Xiao would not be willing to be left behind. On the surface, they seemed to care about Xian Miao Miao, but they were actually trying to win over Huijia and gain face in front of the crowd. The crowd's eyes trembled, and their eyes became blazing. Xian Xiao had just taken out an 8th grade elixir pill. Xian Zhao's gift couldn't be worse. Xian Miao Miao kept her head down, not daring to speak. Huijia smiled and waited for Xian Xiao to take out the gift. Since someone was cutting their own flesh, he would not stop them. Xian Xiao watched from the side with an embarrassed expression. Since Xian Xiao appeared, he had only glanced at him. He didn't even say a word to him, which made him very uncomfortable. Xian Xiao took out a scroll and handed it to Xian Miao Miao. Little sister, I came in a hurry and don't have anything else with me except this 7th grade spiritual formation scroll. It is a spirit gathering formation made by Master Li Jin himself. Cultivating inside the formation is dozens of times faster than outside. I'll give it to you today. A 7th grade spirit gathering formation. The crowd exclaimed. Li Jin was the president of the Spirit Formation Guild. His status in the Xianhua Empire was no lower than Huijia and Jiaguang. A 7th grade spirit gathering formation was no less valuable than an 8th grade elixir pill. Xian Xiao and Xian Xiao had really gone all out for this. Your Highness, Xian Miao Miao was very nervous. She had never seen such a scene before. Her heart was pounding wildly. However, before she could finish speaking, Huijia chuckled and took the scroll. It's a good gift. I'll hold it for the little girl. Thank you, Your Highness. Nie Tian was also stunned as he watched from the side. Xian Miao Miao was really lucky this time. Rank 8 spirit pills, rank 7 spirit arrays. Her future path of cultivation would be much easier. Xian Xiao, his younger brother Xian Qi had died because of Xian Miao Miao. She wondered what his reaction would be if he knew this. Little girl, both of your brothers have expressed their intentions. Let's continue with the ceremony. Fire Armor chuckled and waved his hand at Brock, indicating that the ceremony should continue. Xian Xiao didn't stop them this time. He just watched from the side. When his gaze landed on Nie Tian, His eyes revealed an undisguised murderous intent. Soon, the apprenticeship ceremony ended, and Xian Miao Miao officially became Fire Armor's disciple. Master Fire Armor, my sister's apprenticeship ceremony is over. I have some personal matters to deal with. Seeing that the apprenticeship ceremony was over, Xian Xiao didn't wait any longer. He told Fire Armor and strode forward. His cold eyes locked onto Nie Tian. With a murderous intent, he said coldly, "Your name is Nie Tian?" Seeing this, Fire Armor's expression suddenly changed. He had been worried that Xian Xiao's purpose for coming here was not simple. Now, it seemed that Xian Xiao was indeed here for Nie Tian. But logically speaking, Xian Qi and Dao Quanxing both died yesterday. The matter shouldn't have been exposed so quickly. Seeing that Xian Xiao had come to Nie Tian, Xian Xiao's expression also changed, and he frowned. "What do you want?" Nie Tian looked straight at Xian Xiao, his expression as calm as usual. Xian Xiao was overbearing, but Nie Tian wasn't afraid of him. Nie Tian could tell that Xian Xiao was in the second tier of the sky human realm. He was very powerful, one tier higher than him. No wonder he was one of 9 demons. Xian Xiao was ranked second among the 9 demons, second only to Qianlong Yingzheng. He was far stronger than Xian Xiao, who was ranked 9th. However, Xian Xiao was much younger than Xian Xiao, so it was hard to say who was more talented. Seeing Nie Tian's calm expression, Xian Xiao couldn't help but be stunned. There weren't many people who could remain calm in front of him, especially at Nie Tian's age. "Are you the one who attacked the Yun clan?" Xian Xiao said coldly. His entire body released a domineering pressure that enveloped Nie Tian. Nie Tian's body trembled slightly. The Sword of the Divine Wheel, which was formed by the fusion of the Divine Wheel space and the Sword Warp and Weft, was activated. Boom! There was a loud noise in the air. The two forces collided. Nie Tian had actually broken through Xian Xiao's pressure. Although Xian Xiao was powerful, it wasn't possible for him to make Nie Tian lower his head with just his calm pressure. "So what if I am?" The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, but his expression remained calm. It turned out that Xian Xiao was here because of Yun Yu and Yun Zong. It seemed that he still didn't know about Xian Qi and Dao Quanxing. "You attacked the Yun clan?" On the other side, Hua Jia was stunned. He didn't understand. Could it be that other than killing Xian Qi and Dao Quanxing, Nie Tian had done something else? Bai Luo whispered anxiously in Hua Jia's ear. The latter's expression was as ugly as it could be. Nie Tian was really like a hornet's nest, stinging people everywhere. "Yes, you have to die." Xian Zhao's expression slowly turned cold as he said each word clearly. He wouldn't ask any questions. As long as Nie Tian attacked the Yun clan, no matter what the process was, Nie Tian had to die. This was Xian Zhao's rule. It was unreasonable and overbearing. "Brother," Nie Tian attacked the Yun clan. "The Yun clan was in the wrong first. It's not appropriate for you to kill him directly." At this moment, Xian Xiao was the first to speak. His voice was cold and no longer respectful. "I don't care about right or wrong. I only care about the result," Xian Xiao replied coldly without even looking at Xian Xiao. He didn't care about right or wrong. He only cared about the result. When the crowd heard Xian Zhao's words, their hearts trembled violently. Xian Xiao was too overbearing and unreasonable. He didn't even give Xian Xiao any face. Many people already knew about what had happened in the Blue Dragon Institute. At this moment, the crowd looked at Nie Tian. They all thought that he was dead meat. How could he survive after being targeted by Crown Prince Xian Xiao? "Your Highness," Nie Tian is Ai's friend. "I apologize on his behalf for what happened to the Yun clan. I will owe your Highness a favor and let this matter rest." "How about that?" Hua Jia suddenly stepped forward and said calmly. The crowd turned to look at Hua Jia. They didn't expect him to take responsibility for everything on behalf of Nie Tian. Hua Jia's words clearly meant that he wanted to take responsibility for what happened to the Yun clan. What was his relationship with Nie Tian then? Xian Xiao was also stunned. His gloomy gaze swept across Hua Jia, and his eyes suddenly flickered. After a pause, Xian Xiao said, Grandmaster Huijia, since you've spoken, it's not appropriate for me to reject you. How about this? I'll only make one move. After that, regardless of whether Nyetian lives or dies, I won't pursue the matter regarding the Yun clan. Chapter 769. Only one move. The crowd trembled violently when they heard Crown Prince Xian Zhao's words. Only now did they understand that Xian Zhao's ferocity was indeed well-deserved. Who was Xian Zhao? The second of the 9 demons in the Meru world. He was one of the 19 most talented people in the entire Meru world. And what about Nyetian? Before killing Yunyu and Yunzong, he was a nobody. Moreover, Nyetian was too young. He was not even 20 years old. Crown Prince Xian Zhao and Nyetian were not on the same level at all. Huijia's expression stiffened slightly when he heard Xian Zhao's reply. He immediately said, Crown Prince, Your Highness, you really give this old man face. Only one move. What a nice way of putting it. Your Highness is at the second level of Heaven Human, while Nyetian is only at the second level of Heaven Evolution. The two of you are an entire major realm apart. Given the Crown Prince's strength, even a first-level Heaven Human martial artist would not be able to withstand an all-out move, much less a second-level Heaven Evolution martial artist. Huijia's expression was extremely ugly when he finished speaking. He did not expect Xian Zhao to be arrogant to this extent. He did not even give him face. He had personally taken care of the Yun family's matter for Nyetian, but Xian Zhao still refused to give up. This was simply a slap to his old face. The crowd looked at Xian Zhao strangely. The latter was clearly bent on taking Nyetian's life. Royal brother, you are really magnanimous. I admire you. Xian Zhao glanced at Xian Zhao and said sarcastically. Xian Zhao completely ignored Xian Zhao's mockery. He stared fixedly at Nyetian, releasing a sharp, murderous intent. For some reason, Xian Zhao had a vague feeling that if he did not kill Nyetian today, the latter would definitely become a formidable opponent in the future. Xian Zhao sensed an extremely strange power hidden in Nyetian's body. This power even made him feel inexplicable fear. At this time, the crowd's gazes gradually shifted to Nyetian to see how he would respond. Nyetian's expression was calm, as usual. There was no ripple in his eyes. It was as though he did not take Xian Zhao seriously at all. One move? Suddenly, Nyetian laughed and said, Since your highness is in such a good mood, how can I be a wet blanket? I'll play with you. His voice was calm, but it was filled with extreme mockery. Hiss! Nyetian's words made everyone's eyes narrow. They all sucked in a breath of cold air, and their backs were covered in cold sweat. Nyetian had actually agreed to take on Xian Zhao's attack, and in such a calm manner. This was something that no one had expected. Xian Zhao's strength was a whole realm higher than his. He could not even take half a move, much less one. Since Huijia had stepped forward, he would definitely fight to the end. No matter how arrogant Xian Zhao was, he would not dare to fall out with Huijia. If Nyetian didn't say anything, it wouldn't be a problem for him to stay alive. In everyone's opinion, Nyetian was courting death by agreeing to Xian Zhao's challenge. Nyetian, brother Nyetian, Huijia and Xian Miao Miao exclaimed at the same time when they heard Nyetian agree. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Nyetian smiled, his expression indifferent. It might be too much for him to fight to the death with Xian Zhao now, but Nyetian was 100% confident that he could only take on one move from the other party. He even wanted to kill Xian Zhao in one move. Know what I'm doing? The crowd was stunned, but their eyes were full of contempt. How could a second-level Heavenly Evolution warrior take on a second-level Heaven Human warrior's move? Know what he was doing? Nyetian did not care about the crowd's reaction. He took a step forward and stared at Xian Zhao with a burning gaze. Huijia's expression was extremely ugly. There was no turning back now. He could only hope for a miracle. In any case, with his experience, he had never seen a second-level Heavenly Evolution warrior take on a second-level Heaven Human warrior's move. A Heaven Human Realm warrior's Heaven Human Realm was too terrifying. It was not something a Heaven Evolution warrior could withstand. Nyetian and Xian Zhao arrived at the huge square outside the guild hall. Tian, you're asking for it. You can't blame me for it. The corners of Xian Zhao's mouth suddenly curled up, and a cold, murderous intent surged in his eyes. The murderous intent condensed all over his body and enveloped Tian. Tian was not afraid of this murderous intent at all. He stood proudly on the spot with disdain in his eyes. His figure was like a sword and as firm as a rock. At that moment, Xian Zhao's burly body swayed slightly. The vital meridians in his body revolved wildly, and an invisible pressure spread out, enveloping the space within a few hundred meters. The crowd felt the terrifying pressure and retreated one after another. Heaven-human realm. Huijia also retreated. His expression stiffened, and his heart trembled. He did not expect Xian Zhao to be not only overbearing, but also shameless. He had used heaven-human realm on a heaven evolution warrior. This was using his power to oppress him. Big brother Tian. Xian Miao Miao's eyes trembled. Tears brewed in her eyes and slowly flowed down. His Royal Highness is too much. He actually used heaven-human realm. He clearly wants Tian to die. The crowd's eyes were burning, and some people discussed in a low voice. Some people from the four major families were happy, and some were worried. Yu Jiao stared at Tian with a complicated expression, as if she was thinking about something. She did not know why, but she had a feeling that Tian could take Xian Zhao's attack. Brat, prepare to die. Xian Zhao unleashed his heaven-human realm, and his lips curled into a cold smile. Within this space of several hundred meters, he was the overlord, ruling over everything. It was difficult for Tian to revolve his vital meridians in the heaven-human realm, let alone fight back. The heaven-human realm had absolute suppression on martial artists below the heaven realm. It was impossible to break through it without some extraordinary means. Tian felt the invisible pressure from the space, making it hard for him to breathe. The heaven-human realm is indeed insane. Tian smiled bitterly in his heart. Although his expression was a little ugly, he still remained calm, and the determination in his eyes did not change. Xian Zhao took a step forward, and his aura surged. The pressure from the heaven-human realm was extreme, and everyone could feel the agitation in their chests. At that moment, everyone's eyes widened. They knew that Xian Zhao was going to make a move. Die! The next moment, a furious roar was heard. Xian Zhao struck out with his palm, and black sand appeared in the void. It was vast and boundless, and it condensed into a giant hand in the air, grabbing at Tian. The giant black sand hand released a powerful aura of destruction, and there were even traces of blood flowing in it. It was very strange. Mysterious blood, jade sand. Huijia's eyes widened when he saw that, and he cursed, "Bastard, you're even using the power of your bloodline." The mysterious blood jade sand was the power of the Xian family's bloodline. Huijia had never thought that Xian Zhao would be so shameless. Not only did he use the heaven-human realm, but he also used the power of his bloodline to deal with a heaven evolution realm martial artist. He had spared no effort in this move. He was simply trying to kill with a single blow. The hearts of the crowd trembled. Since Xian Zhao had used the power of his bloodline, Tian had no chance of survival. The tragic scene of Tian being crushed in a minced meat already appeared in everyone's minds. Chapter 770. The moment Tian opened his eyes, the power of the stars in his body surged out and gathered in his eyes, turning into powerful spiritual power. At that moment, everyone felt a real tremor. It was as if everything around them was trembling. It was a tremor that came from the very fabric of space itself. It was an inexplicable fear. Xian Zhao only wanted to kill Tian. All his attention was focused on Tian. When that spiritual deterrence appeared, his eyes glazed over, and he lost control of his spirit. In an instant, the giant black sand hand in the air paused, and the celestial realm disappeared. Immediately after, Tian took a step and flew into the air. He looked down at Xian Zhao and formed a strange seal with both hands. The power of heaven and earth changed immediately. The spiritual power of heaven and earth within thousands of meters tilted towards Tian and surged into his body. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Flowing killing seal kill. Nietion's aura surged. He was like a god of death standing in the air. His eyes were cold and emotionless. He shouted in a low voice and slammed his palm down. The space shook violently, and a terrifying handprint appeared, pressing down on Xian Xiao. At that moment, Xian Zhao's eyes were slightly glazed, as if he had lost his mind. However, the moment the flowing killing seal landed on him, his eyes snapped back to reality. Suddenly, a layer of blood jade mystic sand appeared and wrapped around his body, forming a mystic sand shield. Boom! The flowing killing seal landed, and turbid waves dozens of meters high rose from the ground. A mighty force spread out. The crowd involuntarily took a few steps back, but their eyes were fixed on Xian Xiao. The reversal happened in an instant. No one could react. Most people did not know what Nietion had done just now. He had actually broken the celestial realm and made Xian Xiao lose his mind for a moment. However, the feeling just now was too terrifying. Even their souls could not help but tremble when they thought about it. Nietion's figure descended from the sky. His face was pale, and the light in his eyes had dimmed. He was very tired. As the dust settled, Xian Zhao's figure appeared in front of everyone. He was not injured, but he was in a sorry state. His face was covered in dust, and his hair was messy. He did not look like a prince at all. He looked like a beggar. We still failed. Nietion could not help but smile bitterly when he saw that Xian Xiao was unscathed. Xian Xiao wanted to kill him, and he wanted to kill Xian Xiao too. Originally, he wanted to use absolute terror to catch Xian Xiao off guard, and then use the flowing mortal seal to kill him. Unfortunately, Xian Zhao's strength was too strong, and his mental fortitude was not weak either. At the critical moment, his spirit awoke, and he used the blood jade mystical sand to block the fatal blow of the flowing human seal. If Xian Xiao had woken up half a second later, he would have been severely injured, if not dead. Nietion felt that it was a pity, but at this moment, everyone was shocked by him. Who would have thought that not only did he block Xian Zhao's attack, but he was also unscathed? Not only that, he even counterattacked and almost succeeded. This scene was too shocking and indescribable. Everyone looked at Nietion in disbelief, as if they were looking at a monster. It had to be said that the current Nietion was a monster in their eyes. Huijia and the others were also stunned. They were so shocked that they could not speak. A moment later, the sound of gulping saliva could be heard from the crowd. Oh! At this moment, Xian Xiao, who was standing on the spot, suddenly howled like a wild beast that had gone mad. Impossible, I don't believe it. Xian Xiao roared crazily. His facial features were twisted into a ball, and he looked hideous and terrifying. His voice was trembling, and so was his entire body. Without a doubt, this was the trembling of rage. Xian Xiao looked at Nietion with bloodshot eyes. He felt an indescribable sense of humiliation in his heart. To think that he, a dignified second-level heaven human martial artist, was actually beaten up by a second-level heaven evolution martial artist. This was a great humiliation and unforgivable. He was the crown prince of the Black Moon Empire. He was one of the 9 demons of the Meru world. He was a big shot that could only be looked up to and feared by others. How could he endure such humiliation? The crowd looked at Xian Xiao with very complicated expressions. There was fear, dread, doubt, and even a trace of pity. Xian Xiao probably never dreamed that there would be a moment like this in his life. The air suddenly became still. The scene was dead silent. Xian Zhao's heavy breathing reverberated in the air, and he looked even more wretched. His entire body could not stop trembling. There was a stuffy feeling in his chest, and it was uncomfortable. He could not take this lying down. Your Highness, one move is over. The matter with the Yun family ends here, Nietion said calmly as he looked at Xian Xiao calmly. He did not have time to care about Xian Zhao's current feelings. One move was over. According to the agreement, the matter with the Yun family would end here. The crowd looked at Xian Xiao to see how the latter would respond. Brat, I'll tear you apart. Xian Xiao glared at Nietion. The murderous intent in his eyes suddenly intensified. With a roar, he attacked again. Boom! Xian Shao was less than 10 meters away from Nie Tian. He struck out with his palm, and the black sand hand, made of blood jade, mystical sand appeared again, pressing down on Nie Tian. The crowd's eyes widened. No one had expected Xian Shao to attack again. The dignified crown prince had gone back on his word in front of so many people. It was really shocking. "Watch out!" Fire Armor shouted. He wanted to attack again, but it was too late. In this moment of life and death, Nie Tian was unusually calm. His body shook, and he activated all kinds of defenses. The Dragon Scale Shield, the 17th Sword Shield, the Star Shield, and the Sky Yuan Armor of Waterpole were activated almost at the same time. In the next moment, a vast amount of star power surged out of his body. The sky-shrouding totem appeared again, enveloping his entire body and forming a sky-shrouding armor. Boom! 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 The black sand hand pressed down, and there was a violent explosion in the air. The sky-shrouding armor, the Dragon Scale Shield, the Sword Shield, the Star Shield, and the Sky Yuan Armor of Waterpole were destroyed layer by layer. Nie Tian's body flew backward, and a trail of blood splattered in the air. The crowd's eyes trembled as they followed Nie Tian's figure. Bang! Nie Tian landed on the ground and stood firmly on the ground. His whole body was covered in blood, but his eyes were still determined. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Nie Tian's body shook. The blood and dirt on his body shook off, and the wounds on his body healed in the blink of an eye. Crown Prince Xian Shao, is this all you've got? Is this all you've got? Nie Tianling stared coldly at Xian Shao, his eyes rippling with extreme disdain. Xian Zhao's attack just now was too sudden, and Nie Tian didn't have much time to react. If not, Nie Tian would have used the sky-shrouding totem, and he wouldn't have been in such a sorry state. Gasp! When the crowd saw that Nie Tian wasn't dead, they all gasped. The shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. The strength that Nie Tian had displayed today had completely overturned everyone's understanding of a level 2 heavenly evolution realm martial artist. This is impossible. When Xian Shao saw that Nie Tian wasn't dead and had even mocked him, his expression became extremely ugly. The murderous intent in his eyes burned like a raging fire. He moved, intending to attack again. Chapter 771. Master Huojia. When the crowd saw that the figure standing between Nie Tian and Xian Shao was Huojia, their hearts couldn't help but tremble. Their gazes became heated. If Huojia and Xian Shao were to fight, this would be a great show to watch. Nie Tian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Huojia. If he continued to fight with Xian Shao, he would probably have to use the Spirit Dragon Ring. It would be troublesome if others suspected that he was from the 10,000 Demon Dragon Abyss. Xian Shao, as the Crown Prince, how could you go back on your word and go back on your word in front of everyone? Do you think this old man is just air? Huojia was furious. He no longer gave Xian Shao any face and coldly rebuked him. Huojia was not only a master craftsman, but he was also a martial artist. He had lived for more than 500 years. Although his martial arts talent was not top-notch, his cultivation was in the 5th stage of the celestial human realm. He was strong enough to suppress Xian Shao. Moreover, they were in the Craftsman's Guild. There were countless hidden guards, as well as by Luo and the others. Huojia was naturally fearless. Xian Shao looked at Huojia. His eyes were filled with resentment and humiliation. Huojia's status was too high. Even if he did not have any cultivation, Xian Shao would not dare to attack him. Attacking Huojia was no different from declaring war on the Craftsman's Guild. The consequences were too severe. Even the Black Moon Empire could not bear the consequences, let alone Xian Shao. Xian Shao was arrogant, but he was not a fool. He understood this. However, if he let Nie Tian go just like that, he would not be able to take it lying down. If today's incident spread, he would be utterly humiliated as the Crown Prince. After thinking about it, Xian Zhao's eyes flickered. He looked at Huojia and said, "Master Huojia, are you really going to protect this person?" Huojia smiled Xian Shao and asked, "Xian Shao, are you really going to go back on your word?" Huojia's question revealed his determination. "Brother, you are the Crown Prince of the Xianyu Empire. If you go back on your words, it will affect the reputation of the entire imperial family. I hope you'll think twice." At this time, Xian Xiu's voice sounded. He didn't even try to hide his joy at Huang Xiaolong's misfortune. "Shut up." Xian Xiao glared at Xian Xiu coldly and scolded him. Xian Xiu's face twitched a few times. The hatred in his eyes was very obvious, but he didn't say anything. Xian Xiao thought for a long time. His murderous gaze swept across Nie Tian, and his eyes were filled with indignation and anger. Nie Tian, on the other hand, looked calm and relaxed. "Farewell, Master Fire Armor." Xian Xiao gnashed his teeth, but in the end, he could only speak hatefully. Without waiting for Huijia's reply, he took a step forward and soared into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. "He's gone." The crowd looked in the direction that Xian Xiao had disappeared in with some regret in their eyes. The onlookers were not afraid to blow things up. Xian Xiao did not fight Huijia, which disappointed the crowd. From this, it could be seen that even the royal family of Mystic Moon dared to offend the Craftsmen's Guild. Xian Xiao's departure marked the end of the show. Huijia's expression softened a little. He looked at Nie Tian and smiled bitterly. "Nie Tian, are you all right?" Nie Tian waved his hand casually, indicating that he was fine. Huijia's opinion of Nie Tian had completely changed. The strength that the latter had displayed was too strange, and it was beyond his imagination. After a while, the crowd gradually dispersed. Before Yu Jiao left, she glanced at Nie Tian. It seemed like she wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't. "Nie Tian, can we talk now?" At this moment, Xian Xiu walked over, his eyes showing that he was trying to be friendly. The strength that Nie Tian had displayed just now was too strong, and it shocked Xian Xiu. If he had been the one fighting Xian Xiao just now, he would have been crippled if not dead. Nie Tian's expression was a little ugly, and he was as pale as a sheet. Although the power of absolute tremor was terrifying, it consumed a lot of mental power. Even the current Nie Tian would fall into a state of mental exhaustion after using it once. Huijia glanced at Xian Xiu, not concealing the displeasure in his heart. "Sure." However, Nie Tian didn't reject him. He said lightly, "Elder Hua, please arrange a room for me. I have something to discuss with the 19th Highness." Xian Xiu was very interested in Nie Tian. It seemed like he had something to ask of him. However, Nie Tian wasn't easy to deal with. He was best at demanding an exorbitant price. "Okay." Huijia nodded slightly, but he didn't look too good. He felt that what Nie Tian needed the most now was rest. Huijia asked Bai Luo to bring Xian Miao Miao away, and he taught her some basic knowledge of crafting weapons. Since he had taken Xian Miao Miao as his disciple, Huijia would do his best to teach her, no matter how talented she was. After a while, Nie Tian and Xian Xiu arrived at a room. "The 19th Highness, there's no one here now. What's the matter? Speak." Nie Tian looked at Xian Xiu with a strange expression and smiled lightly. Xian Xiu was very cautious. After confirming that there was no one around, he said, "Nie Tian, I'm here to make a deal with you." Just the day before, Xian Xiu had naively thought that he could subdue Nie Tian and make him his loyal subordinate. However, after what had happened that day, he understood that it would be best for him and Nie Tian to have a cooperative relationship. A deal. Nie Tian smiled faintly, but he was secretly happy. Since it was a deal, it had to be mutually beneficial. This time, he wanted to extort a lot of money from Xian Xiu. "Okay." Xian Xiu nodded and said, "Nie Tian, have you heard of the wind and cloud technique?" "The wind and cloud technique?" Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He suddenly recalled something and laughed, shaking his head. "I've never heard of it." Nie Tian had never heard of the wind and cloud technique, but he had seen it before. When he was outside the city, he accidentally killed a messenger pigeon. On the note was a sentence: "The wind and cloud technique in 2 months, the forbidden land of wind and cloud." Hearing Xian Xiu mention the wind and cloud technique, Nie Tian vaguely guessed that it should be something like a martial arts competition, where geniuses from all walks of life would gather and fight out. Xian Xiu let out a long breath and said, There's a forbidden land in the sacred light domain called the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud. It is located at the intersection of the 5 first-rate forces in the sacred light domain. It is rumored that the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud is a blessed land left behind by an ancient expert. There are many ancient treasures and even ancient legacies inside. The Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud is protected by a special seal that opens once every 20 years. The 5 first-rate forces reached an agreement a long time ago. When the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud opens, all 5 forces can send people in to seek powerful legacies or rare treasures. In 2 months, the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud technique will open and the 5 forces will begin. The Dark Moon Empire can send 10 people into the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud, but they must be martial artists below the celestial realm. I and Crown Prince Xian Xiao can each send 5 people. Therefore, I want you to enter the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud. Nye Tian nodded slightly, completely understanding what was going on. This Xian Xiao was really cunning. He actually wanted Nye Tian to enter the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud. Since the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud was left behind by an ancient expert, it must be extremely dangerous inside. According to Xian Xiao, the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud only allowed martial artists below the celestial realm to enter. Coincidentally, he was at the Heavenly Evolution 9th level and met the requirements to enter. Chapter 772. The Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud was a relic left from ancient times, but it just so happened to be located at the border of the 5 forces. In order to keep each other in check, the 5 forces each sent people into the Forbidden Land, and only those below the Heaven tier were allowed to enter. Nye Tian thought for a moment, then asked, "Who are the 5 forces?" Although Nye Tian was not too familiar with the Holy Light region, he still wanted to know about the 5 forces so that he could be prepared. 3 first-rate empires and 2 first-rate sections. Xian Xiao was delighted to see Nye Tian's interest. The 3 empires are the Dark Moon Empire, the Blazing Sun Empire, and the Wood Leaf Empire. The 2 sects are the Sky Sword Pavilion and the Heaven Severing Sect. Sky Sword Pavilion. Hearing the familiar name, Nye Tian could not help but be taken aback. Then his lips curled into a smile. It seemed that Sky Sword Pavilion's power in the Holy Light region was on the same level as the Dark Moon Empire. They were strong, but not too strong. Xian Xiao nodded. In the past, our Dark Moon Empire and Sky Sword Pavilion have always been in a cooperative relationship. The other 3 forces are even closer. Hearing Xian Xiao's words, Nye Tian could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. The Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud was a dangerous place, but also a land of treasures. In a place like that, not to mention 2 forces, even cultivators from the same force would have conflicts of interest. In the end, alliances were temporary. Only interests were eternal. Nye Tian, are you willing to go? Seeing that Nye Tian seemed to be hesitating, Xian Xiao's heart tightened, afraid that the other would not agree. Nye Tian was not hesitating, but thinking. The Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud was an opportunity that was very attractive to him. But seeing how anxious Xian Xiao was, he naturally would not let go of a good chance to rip someone off. 19th Highness, I can go to the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud, but there are some things that we need to make clear first. Nye Tian smiled faintly, a strange look in his eyes. What do you want? Just say it. Xian Xiao was very generous. As long as Nye Tian was willing to go, he could provide a generous reward. The strength that Nye Tian had just displayed made even him wary. As long as one entered the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud, they would basically be the strongest within the Forbidden Land. Naturally, their competitiveness would also be the strongest. First, anything you find in the forbidden area belongs to me. Nye Tian was best at demanding an exorbitant price. He chuckled and stated his first condition. Xian Xiao's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect Nye Tian's first condition to be so exaggerated. His eyes trembled, and he immediately said, "You can have the other things, but if you obtain the ancient inheritance, you must bring it out." Inheritance? Tian was stunned. It seemed that Xianxiu was not easy to deal with. In the forbidden land of wind and cloud, even if there were any spirit weapons or spirit pills, they would have been destroyed long ago. However, the inheritance was something that could not be destroyed. Just like Mo Rushi's Phoenix Soul inheritance, it was still intact even after hundreds of thousands of years. Xianxiu knew that the inheritance was a good thing, but how could Tian not know? 19th Highness. Tian looked at Xianxiu and suddenly let out a strange laugh. He asked, I want to know, every time 50 people enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud, how many people come out alive? Each of the 5 major forces would send 10 people, for a total of 50 people. Hearing this question, Xianxiu was obviously stunned. His eyes narrowed, and he said, Not a single one. Not a single one? Tian was stunned. He didn't expect to receive such an answer. Xianxiu said in a low voice, The forbidden land of wind and cloud was discovered several hundred years ago and has been opened more than a dozen times. Every time someone enters, not a single one comes out alive. He didn't want to say this, but this information couldn't be hidden. Tian just had to ask Huijia and the others, and they would know. So that's how it is. The corner of Tian's mouth curved. Xianxiu's words didn't scare him. Instead, he felt inexplicably excited. He liked places like the forbidden land of wind and cloud, just like the bloody massacre tomb and the chaotic abyss of the 3,000 lesser worlds. 19th Highness, since no one has ever come out of the forbidden land of wind and cloud, it is too early for us to talk about the inheritance. Tian smiled faintly and said, How about this? I promise you that if there's a chance, I will bring back the inheritance for you. But the prerequisite is that I must obtain the inheritance first. Xianxiu looked at Tian. The latter's eyes were calm and determined. He nodded and agreed to Tian's request. The reason why Xianxiu valued the battle of wind and cloud so much was because he wanted to obtain the inheritance. He knew that his talent was inferior to Xianxiu's. Even if he could compete with the latter now, the one to inherit the throne would still be Xianxiu. At that time, he would be in great danger. With Xianxiu's personality, the first person he would kill after inheriting the throne would be Xianxiu. But if Xianxiu obtained the inheritance, then things would be different. No matter what inheritance he obtained, Xianxiu was confident that he could defeat Xianxiu and truly fight for the throne. Whether or not he could obtain the inheritance would determine Xianxiu's future survival. Tian, what other conditions do you have? Xianxiu continued to ask. He now believed that if anyone could come out of the forbidden land of wind and cloud alive, that person would be Tian. Your Highness has a quota of 5 people. Tian smiled strangely and said, Apart from me, I want to choose the other for myself. You choose? Xianxiu was stunned. He didn't think that Tian would raise such a condition. He had originally wanted to find a few confidants to watch over Tian, but who would have thought that the latter would want to choose himself? Tian nodded heavily and said, That's right. I'll choose the 4 of them myself. Otherwise, I will not go to the forbidden land of wind and cloud. He spoke very decisively, leaving no room for negotiation for Xianxiu. This trip to the forbidden land of wind and cloud was fraught with danger. Tian only had one requirement for his teammates, and that was trust. Teammates didn't have to be strong, but they had to be absolutely trustworthy. Tian didn't want to be pushed when he was standing on the edge of a cliff. This king only wants one spot. After a long silence, Xianxiu suddenly said, Leave it for me. Oh. Tian's eyes narrowed, slightly surprised. You want to enter personally? Yes. Xianxiu nodded solemnly. This king is very confident in Mr. Tian. I believe that you won't disappoint this king. Xianxiu had just made a decision to enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud personally. He wanted to gamble with his life on Tian. Xianxiu could tell that if Tian chose his own people, then after entering the forbidden land and Tian obtained the inheritance, his other teammates would also obtain the inheritance. At that time, Xianxiu wouldn't even have a share. So to obtain the inheritance, He had to enter personally and take the risk. Chapter 773. Nietian had not expected Xianxiu to enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud personally. It had to be said that besides being shrewd and gloomy, Xianxiu was also very bold. Your Highness, of course I cannot stop you from entering the forbidden land of wind and cloud. But I must remind you that once you enter the forbidden land, you have to listen to me. Can you do that? Nietian asked calmly as he looked at Xianxiu. The forbidden land of wind and cloud was extremely dangerous. Nietian did not want anyone to quarrel with him at such a crucial time. No problem. Xianxiu nodded. I also have a condition. You have to protect me. Okay. Nietian nodded slightly, but he was speechless. A 9th-level heavenly evolution warrior needed the protection of a 2nd-level heavenly evolution warrior. It was really strange. Xianxiu was relieved to see Nietian agree. He stood up and said, "It's a deal. We'll enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud together in 2 months." Nietian waved his hand. "Don't be hasty, Your Highness. I haven't finished my condition. What other conditions do you have?" Xianxiu was speechless. Nietian had already stated so many conditions, but he still had more. This was too much. Nietian smiled faintly. "I want Your Highness to help me find someone." "Find someone?" Xianxiu was stunned again, but his expression improved. "No problem. As long as the person you are looking for is in the Black Moon Empire, I will definitely help you find him." "I don't know if he is in the Black Moon Empire." Nietian stood up. A ball of light surged out of his palm and gradually condensed into a human figure. It was Jean de Bayo. Nietian and Jean de Bayo had been separated when entering the Meru world. He did not know where Jean de Bayo was now. If he could find Jean de Bayo, Nietian was prepared to bring him into the forbidden land of wind and cloud. Jean de Bayo was not strong, but he was one of Nietian's most trusted people. Furthermore, he had extraordinary perception, which was what Nietian valued the most. 19th Highness, if this person is still in the Dark Moon Empire, please help me find him. If not, it's fine. Nietian could only say this. If Jean de Bayo went to another place in the Sumeru world, there was nothing he could do. All right. Xianxiu memorized Jean de Bayo's appearance and then left. Looking at Xianxiu's back, Nietian could not help but smile strangely. He didn't have a good impression of Xianxiu, but he didn't hate him either. At least compared to Xianxiu, Xianxiu was a little better. After Xianxiu left, Huijia came in. After Huijia came in, he looked at Nietian suspiciously and asked in a muffled voice, "Brat, why did Xianxiu look for you?" With a bitter smile, Nietian didn't try to hide anything and went on to explain what had happened with the wind and cloud mantra. "You want to join the wind and cloud duel?" As soon as Nietian said this, Huijia couldn't help but scream. He looked at him in disbelief and shouted, "Brat, do you know what kind of place the forbidden land of wind and cloud is? It is one of the 3 most dangerous places in the Holy Light region. For hundreds of years, countless people have entered the forbidden land of wind and cloud, and no one has ever come out alive. Do you think you are stronger than those people?" "Yeah." Nietian nodded with a serious expression. He was indeed stronger than those people. Huijia was speechless. He then said, "Brat, you must not go to the forbidden land of wind and cloud. With your talent, even without any inheritance, you can still reach unimaginable heights in the future. There is no need to risk your life." "Elder Hua, I have already promised Xianxiu." Nietian could see that Huijia really cared about him, so he could not refuse. "So what if you agree?" Huijia ignored him and shouted, "If you are embarrassed, this old man will go talk to Xianxiu. Anyway, you must not go to the forbidden land of wind and cloud." Ugh. Nietian was speechless. This old man's reaction was too big. After a pause, Nietian said seriously, "Elder Hua, I have decided about the forbidden land of wind and cloud. You just have to trust me." After that, Nietian did not stay any longer. While Huijia was stunned, he ran away. Huijia was stunned. After a while, Nietian's voice sounded in his ears. "Elder Hua, I have something to do. I will come find Xian Miao Miao tonight." "Little brat, You can't go to the forbidden land of wind and cloud. Huojia finally reacted. He slapped his thigh and sighed. Unfortunately, Nie Tian's figure was already far away. After leaving the Craftsman Guild, Nie Tian went straight to the Yu family auction house. There were still 2 months left before the Wind and Cloud Crusade. It would be best if Xian Xiu could help find Jean de Bayo, but if not, he still needed to find 3 people. These 3 people must be absolutely trusted, so they were not easy to find. For some reason, the first person that appeared in Nie Tian's mind was Yu Jiao. This woman was not very strong, only at the 4th level of heavenly evolution. However, she knew her limits and knew when to advance and retreat. She was a good candidate. After a while, Nie Tian appeared at the Yu family auction house. The person who received him seemed to recognize him. He quickly brought him to a room and said, "Young master, please wait for a moment. Eldest miss will be here soon." Nie Tian waited quietly in the room. After a while, Yu Jiao's figure appeared. Young master Nie Tian. Yu Jiao could not hide the joy in her eyes when she saw Nie Tian, but she was a little restrained. When she saw the battle between Nie Tian and Xian Xiao not long ago, Yu Jiao felt that Nie Tian was an incredible person. "Miss Yu Jiao, I have something to discuss with you." Nie Tian did not stand on ceremony and told her about the wind and cloud law. Finally, he said, "I would like to invite you to enter the forbidden land of wind and cloud with me. Are you willing?" After listening to Nie Tian, Yu Jiao's expression was a little complicated. There was joy, excitement, and worry at the same time. She did not expect that Xian Xiu would let Nie Tian enter the forbidden land of wind, and that he would agree. Xian Xiu even gave Nie Tian the right to choose who to enter. This was even more unexpected. However, the forbidden land of wind and cloud was an extremely dangerous place. Even if Yu Jiao was willing, the Yu family might not agree. "Nie Tian, I need to discuss this with father. I will give you an answer in a few days. Is that okay?" Yu Jiao wanted to go very much. She was especially excited to be able to fight alongside Nie Tian. Of course. Nie Tian smiled faintly. Entering the forbidden land of wind and cloud was a matter of life and death. He could not force her. Then Nie Tian said, "Yu Jiao, I want to ask, is there a large martial arts arena in Mystic Moon City?" "Of course there is." Yu Jiao giggled and teased. "Don't tell me you want to go to the martial arts arena to find someone." Unexpectedly, Nie Tian nodded solemnly. He was indeed going to the martial arts arena to find someone. Yu Jiao was speechless. She murmured, "I thought you would go to the 4 academies to find someone." There were 4 martial arts academies in Mystic Moon Imperial City. Logically speaking, Nie Tian should go to these academies to find someone. Who would have thought that he would go to the martial arts arena to find someone? Brother Nie Tian, the people in the martial arts arena are all very violent and not easy to control. Are you sure you want to go there to find someone? Yu Jiao asked worriedly. Chapter 774. The reason why Nie Tian didn't go to the 4 academies to look for people, but went to the martial arena to look for people, was that he fancied the bloody and violent side of the people in the martial arena. The genius martial artists from the academies were very strong, but their mentality was not necessarily strong. And the martial artists who mingled in the martial arena all year round lived a life of licking blood on the edge every day. Every fight was a life and death battle. This kind of people who had experienced too many life and death situations, even in the face of the most dangerous situation, could maintain absolute calmness. The wind and cloud forbidden land was full of danger. And yet Tian needed this kind of person who could calm down at the critical moment. "All right then, I'll go with you. Let's go to the Liu family's martial arena first." Yu Jiao nodded slightly, decided to accompany Nie Tian. Of course, Nie Tian would not refuse, but he had to pay attention to his eyes at all times, otherwise he would accidentally blush again. Nie Tian now slightly adapted to the starry sky eyes. As long as Yu Jiao did not make too big movements, he could maintain a straight face. Following that, the 2 people went to various martial arenas in Mystic Moon City. But after half a day, after watching many fights, Nie Tian did not find a martial artist who satisfied him. Most people were either not strong enough or too impatient. In short, did not meet Nye Tian's requirements. At this time, Nye Tian and Yu Jiao walked on the street. The curtain of night had already opened, and the sky gradually darkened. Big brother Nye Tian, let's continue looking tomorrow. We can always find a suitable person. Yu Jiao comforted Nye Tian in a low voice. That's the only way. Nye Tian nodded helplessly. Later, he still had to find Xian Miao Miao. But at this time, a voice suddenly sounded, attracting Nye Tian's attention. Two figures hurried over, talking to each other, appearing very excited. Have you heard? A person who can turn his fist into stone appeared in the blood death arena, very powerful. One of them said, Of course I know. That guy is now the rising star of the blood death arena. He has already fought 19 matches in a row, all victories. The other was extremely excited. That guy is competing tonight. Let's hurry up and go. If we're late, we won't be able to see it. The two of them hurriedly walked forward as if they were rushing somewhere. When Nye Tian heard their conversation, his eyes lit up and his heart palpitated. Someone whose fist could turn into stone. Celestial stone body. These words surged in Nye Tian's mind, and his eyes involuntarily became blazing hot. Heavenly stone body, a heaven-ranked spiritual body of heaven and earth. If it was developed to the extreme, the entire body would become a heavenly stone, indestructible and extremely terrifying. Nye Tian had only heard of the celestial stone body in his previous life, but he had never seen one before. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Nye Tian stepped forward to stop the two of them and asked, Big brothers, may I trouble you to ask where this blood death ground is? The two of them glared at Nye Tian, then looked at Yu Jiao, who was standing next to him. They chuckled, and a lustful light flashed in their eyes as they said, Stinking brat, if you want to know where the blood death field is, then let the girl beside you play with us. And Nye Tian's eyes darkened. Wherever he went, he would encounter fools. His body trembled slightly, and a terrifying sword intent enveloped the two of them. The ice-cold, killing intent made the two of them feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Young master, please spare our lives. The two of them felt the surging, killing intent and knelt down with a plop. They kowtowed and bowed. Despicable, Nye Tianling reprimanded and said, Speak, where is the blood death field? We are willing to bring young master there. The two of them were as pale as paper, and they kowtowed as they spoke. Let's go. Nye Tian nodded and indicated for the two of them to lead the way. Yu Jiao followed behind Nye Tian, and her brows were tightly knitted. She grew up in the imperial city and had never heard of the blood death field. She didn't know that there was such a place in the imperial city. Before long, under the two's guidance, Nye Tian and Yu Jiao arrived at a remote place in the imperial city. Nye Tian found out from the two of them that the blood death field was a special existence in the imperial city. Different from ordinary arenas, there were not only battles between martial artists, but there were also battles between martial artists and spirit beasts, and even battles between spirit beasts. The most unique thing was that the battles in the blood death field did not determine victory or defeat, only life and death. Two martial artists, or a martial artist and a spirit beast, or two spirit beasts, as long as they entered the blood death field, it was destined that only one could walk out alive. Every battle in the blood death arena would only end with the death of one side. Those who fought in the blood death field were all slaves. If they performed well and were fancied, they could be bought to be guards, servants, and so on. It was considered the best ending for these slaves. But the vast majority of slaves all died in the blood death field. No one knew who the boss behind the blood death field was, and Profound Moon Imperial City's people were not allowed to publicize the blood death field. Those who knew naturally knew, and those who did not naturally did not know. Yu Jiao was still young. It was not surprising that she did not know the existence of the blood death field. Young master, we've arrived at the blood death field. The two people leading the way stopped and said, This is the blood death field. Yu Jiao was stunned for a moment. Looking over, it was a stretch of desolation all around with nothing at all. But Nye Tian smiled faintly, pointed to the ground, and said, Open the door. Yu Jiao did not see anything. That was because the Blood Death field was built underground. Nietion's starry sky, eye's insight power, was extremely strong. Even underground, it could see through several dozen meters. The two people were stunned for a moment. They did not expect that Nietion could see through the clues at a glance. One of them walked over, took out a token, and flashed it. Rumble! The ground shook violently, and the ground on both sides parted, revealing a deep tunnel. Let's go. Nietion let the two people walk in front, and let Yu Jiao follow behind him. Entering the deep tunnel, after descending roughly several dozen meters, a rumbling sound came from the ground. It should be the door closing. The deep tunnel was very long, no less than a few hundred meters. It was hard to imagine that the Blood Death field was built hundreds of meters underground. After a moment, the light in front of them brightened, and the field of vision became wider. There were noises coming from afar. At this time, two figures in black appeared, wearing blood-colored masks on their faces. New fish, the two people said to the two men in black. The Blood Death field called people who came for the first time new fish. Follow me, one of the men in black said coldly, his tone unquestionable. Yu Jiao was slightly nervous and pulled on Nietion's sleeve. Follow me, it's fine. Nietion smiled faintly and followed the man in black. The man in black brought Nietion and Yu Jiao to get 2 blood thread tokens, spending a total of 200,000 high-grade essence crystals. Fortunately, Nietion had brought enough essence crystals with him. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. You can go and watch the battle. The man in black said coldly and left on his own. Nietion brought Yu Jiao and quickly arrived at a huge square. Roar, roar, roar. Tens of thousands of people crowded in the square, shouting crazily. Nietion walked over, found an inconspicuous place, and looked at the Blood Death field below the center of the square. Chapter 775. In the center of the Bloody Death arena, a tall and sturdy figure was as still as a mountain. The moment Nietion saw this figure, his eyes trembled violently. Even though he was thousands of meters away, Nietion could still see that this person's physique was different from ordinary people. Between the meridians in his body, there was a strange power surging, like small sand and stones, very strange. It really is the heavenly stone body. Nietion's eyes revealed a touch of passion, and his voice was slightly trembling. He was very sure that the figure in the Bloody Death arena was the legendary heavenly stone body. Nietion carefully observed the figure. He was tall and sturdy, but his face was a little immature. He should be young, 15 or 16 years old. What surprised Nietion the most was that the person's whole body was locked up by iron chains. His hands, legs, neck, waist all were locked up tightly. At this time, a gray-robed elder appeared, his figure frozen in midair. With his appearance, the Bloody Death arena suddenly became quiet. Everyone, the gray-robed elder said loudly. Today is Han Tion's 20th battle. As long as he wins this battle, he will become the 13th person in the Bloody Death arena to have 20 consecutive victories. According to the rules, after 25 consecutive victories, the slave will be free. Whether Han Tion can walk on the road to freedom or not, today's battle is very important. According to the rules of the Bloody Death arena, if a slave could win 25 consecutive victories, he would be free. This person named Han Tion had 19 consecutive victories. He was still very far from 25 consecutive victories. 25 consecutive victories. It sounded simple, but since the establishment of the Bloody Death arena, no slave had been able to win 25 consecutive victories. Because the Bloody Death arena wouldn't allow a slave to be free, they would arrange a strong opponent for the slave in the last few battles, so that the slave wouldn't have any chance. Freedom, to a slave, was just an unattainable fantasy. Han Tion, Han Tion, Han Tion. Freedom, freedom, freedom. The crowd shouted like a tsunami, and the whole Bloody Death arena was boiling. Nietion looked at Han Tion from afar. The latter's face was stubborn, and his eyes were filled with terrifying killing intent. All right. The gray-robed elder slightly waved his hand and immediately shouted, "Release Han Tion's opponent." Crash! As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of iron chains rang out in the air. A huge iron cage appeared in the air. Within the iron cage, a wild beast the size of a small mountain roared repeatedly. Eh! Seeing the beast in the cage, Nietion's eyes narrowed. It was an armored one-horned rhinoceros. Nietion had seen the armored one-horned rhinoceros before. He had killed one in the Long mountain range. The armored one-horned rhinoceros was a powerhouse among rank 7 spirit beasts. Its absolute strength was comparable to a 5th-level Heaven Evolution martial artist. Han Tian was only at the 1st level of Heaven Evolution. Would he be a match for the armored one-horned rhinoceros? Nietion looked at the unyielding figure in the arena of bloody death. His eyes trembled slightly, revealing a worried expression. Crash! At this moment, the huge cage opened, and the armored one-horned rhinoceros fell from the sky like a small mountain. Boom! The ground shook violently, and a 10-meter-tall wave of dust rose up. The entire Blood Death arena shook along with it. Fortunately, the Blood Death arena was reinforced by a spirit array. Otherwise, it would not have been able to withstand the impact of the armored one-horned rhinoceros. The crowd's eyes blazed. The long-awaited battle was finally about to begin. Han Tian's figure was burly, but he was very inconspicuous in front of the 100-meter-tall armored one-horned rhinoceros. Nietion stared at the Blood Death arena. He immediately realized that the armored one-horned rhinoceros was very violent. It seemed to have consumed some kind of elixir that stimulated its combat power. Damn it! Nietion's heart sank. The people in the Blood Death arena were too shameless. They clearly wanted Han Tian to die. They actually gave the armored one-horned rhinoceros an elixir. Bang! 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 In the Blood Death arena, the armored one-horned rhinoceros's huge body moved. It was like a moving mountain as it charged over. A huge wave of air blasted out, and a bloody and violent aura surged toward Han Tian. Roar! The crowd burst into a frenzied roar. They were very much looking forward to the scene of Han Tian being crushed. What a powerful aura! Yu Jiao stood behind Nietion. Her expression changed slightly as she exclaimed in surprise. She was a Heavenly Evolution Level 5 martial artist, but she might not be able to block the armored one-horned rhinoceros's attack head-on. At this time, Han Tian's figure also moved. He was still wearing shackles, but his speed was extremely fast. His figure was like an arrow that had left the bow as he charged directly toward the armored one-horned rhinoceros. The crowd's eyes froze. Was Han Tian crazy? He was actually going head-on against the armored one-horned rhinoceros. Han Tian took a step forward, and his figure soared into the sky. The vital meridians in his body revolved crazily, and an explosive power surged out. He opened his hands, and the iron shackles on his hands shattered. Then he punched out. His origin energy surged and condensed into a huge shadow of a fist in the air, crashing toward the armored one-horned rhinoceros. Boom! The shadow of the fist was like a mountain, crashing down mightily. The space shook violently, and waves of air blasted out. The armored one-horned rhinoceros, which was running wildly, actually slowed down slightly. But the violent waves of air also hit Han Tian at the same time, and his figure flew backward, smashing directly onto the ground. The moment he landed, Han Tian immediately stood up, but his body was already dripping with blood. Fortunately, he was a Heavenly Evolution realm martial artist, and his wounds could heal instantly. But at this time, the armored one-horned rhinoceros charged over, and the distance between them was less than 10 meters. At such a close distance, Han Tian had no other choice but to fight with his life on the line. Petrified, Han Tian's eyes were bloodshot. He roared, and a wave of power surged out of his body, instantly condensing on his fist. The next moment, a strange scene appeared. Han Tian's fist rapidly changed. His skin cracked inch by inch, but there was no blood flowing out. Instead, a fine layer of sand flowed out, covering his entire fist. In the blink of an eye, Han Tian's fist doubled in size, as if it was covered with a layer of hard rock. It was a very strange sight. Sky Stone Fist. Nietion saw this scene, and his eyes suddenly flashed, his gaze blazing. Sky Stone Body, when cultivated to the extreme, could become a Sky Stone Body, indestructible, indestructible, and indestructible. The crowd saw Han Tion's petrified fist again, and their eyes trembled. Their eyes widened, not wanting to miss any exciting scene. Go to hell. In the Blood Death field, Han Tion roared, facing the armored one-horned rhinoceros, and actually punched at its giant horn. Bang! In the void, there was a violent shattering sound. Under the watchful eyes of countless pairs of eyes, the horn of the armored one-horned rhinoceros was shattered by Han Tion's punch. A whoa! The huge body of the armored one-horned rhinoceros tilted to the side, and with a miserable howl, it fell to the ground. This scene was too shocking. The entire Blood Death field was dead silent. Chapter 776. Han Tion's fist turned into stone, and with one punch, the rhino's horn was shattered into pieces. The huge body of the armored one-horned rhinoceros collapsed and lay on the ground, panting heavily. Hiss! The crowd in the square gasped at this scene. Their eyes were filled with fear, and their faces were full of disbelief. The armored one-horned rhino was a powerhouse among the 7th-rank spiritual beasts. Its defense and attack abilities were shocking, and yet it could not withstand a single punch from Han Tion. The Sky Stone Body is indeed powerful. Nietion couldn't help but click his tongue. He had originally estimated that even if Han Tion could defeat the armored one-horned rhinoceros, both of them would be severely injured. Who would have thought that Han Tion could defeat the armored one-horned rhinoceros with a single punch? In the Blood Death arena, seeing the armored one-horned rhinoceros fall, Han Tion did not hesitate, leaping up and landing on its head. Bang! His eyes flashed with coldness as he punched the rhino with his petrified fist. Blood splashed everywhere, creating a bloody scene. Han Tion took out his fist again, and a spirit core appeared in his hand. Just like that, the armored one-horned rhino died. The crowd's eyes trembled violently, unable to react in time. They stared at the silhouette inside the field of death, unable to hide the shock in their eyes. After a while, the elder in gray reappeared. He looked at Han Tion with a cold look. His eyes were extremely unfriendly and filled with malice. There was even a hint of killing intent. Han Tion versus the armored one-horned rhino. Han Tion wins. The elder in gray glanced around and announced loudly, Han Tion, Han Tion, Han Tion. Immediately, the field of death was filled with screams and shouts. The crowd was boiling with excitement as they shouted Han Tion's name, as if he was not a slave, but a hero. Sadly, no matter how much these people shouted, they did not care about Han Tion's life or death. They only cared about the result of the battle. The Sky Stone Body, not bad. You will be the one. Nietion watched Han Tion's silhouette from afar, and his lips curled up. He was very satisfied with the latter's performance, as he was qualified to enter the forbidden ground of wind and cloud with him. Originally, Nietion thought that the battle was over, but he was wrong. At this time, a giant metal claw appeared in the air above the Bloody Death field, directly moving the armored one-horned rhino's corpse away. Everyone. Then, the gray-robed elder spoke again, this time in a loud voice. Han Tion has won 20 battles in a row, becoming the 13th slave in the Bloody Death ground to achieve such a result. The gray-robed old man emphasized the word slave as his eyes shone with a malicious light. He smiled sinisterly and continued, Han Tion only needs to win 5 more rounds, and he will be free. Now, let the battle continue. Hearing that the battle was going to continue, the crowd cheered again. Their eyes burned with passion, and they almost went crazy. Continue? Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not expect that Han Tion would still want to continue fighting after his first battle. I understand. His gaze locked onto the gray-robed elder, and he suddenly understood. Han Tion had to fight all 25 matches today, and this was something that was basically impossible. The following opponents would definitely be stronger than the last. The people of the Blood Death Ground were determined to kill Han Tian in the Blood Death Ground. These bastards! Nye Tian cursed in his heart, and his blood boiled uncontrollably. Brother Nye Tian, if Han Tian continues to fight, he will be in danger, right? Yu Jiao also noticed something, and she said worriedly, "Yes." Nye Tian nodded. His face was solemn. If the battle continued, Han Tian would not only be in danger, but he would also die. The Bloody Death Ground did not give Han Tian any chance to be free. Even if he could win 24 battles in a row, the last opponent would be extremely terrifying, and he would not be able to win. There was only blood and death in the Bloody Death Ground, and there was no freedom to speak of. As the gray-robed elder's voice faded away, another giant metal cage appeared in the air above the Bloody Death Ground. This time, there was no giant spirit beast in the cage, but 3 small spirit beasts that were 3 to 4 meters long. They looked like cats, but they had 3 tails. 3-tailed demonic cat. Seeing the spirit beasts in the cage, Nye Tian's eyes narrowed, and his expression suddenly changed. 3-tailed demonic cat was a rank 7 spirit beast. It was extremely fast, and its attack power was extremely strong. It was very difficult to deal with. For ordinary Heavenly Evolution Realm warriors, a 3-tailed demonic cat was not difficult to deal with. But for a warrior like Han Tian, who had a powerful martial body and strength, the 3-tailed demonic cat was very difficult to deal with. Awoo! The cage opened, and the 3 demonic cats let out ear-piercing roars. Their bodies moved like lightning, and they directly jumped out. The gray-robed elder looked at Han Tian coldly and chuckled. Han Tian, these 3 little guys have been hungry for half a month. You're the best food in front of them. Enjoy it. After saying that, the elder's figure flashed, and then he disappeared. Shameless. Nye Tian clearly heard the gray-robed elder's words, and he cursed in his heart. In the Bloody Death Ground, the 3 demonic cats looked at Han Tian with their teeth bared, as if they were looking at the most delicious food. They had not eaten for half a month, and they were in a berserk state. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 demonic cats attacked at the same time. The 3 figures were like arrows shot from a bow. They were extremely fast, and they turned into 3 streams of light in the air, fighting to be the first to attack Han Tian. So fast, Nye Tian's gaze involuntarily froze when he saw this scene. The 3-tailed demonic cat was a wind-type spirit beast. Its greatest advantage was its speed and attack power, especially its speed. Even an ordinary Heavenly Evolution Realm warrior might not be able to match up to it. Han Tian frowned slightly. He took a step forward, and he actually directly rushed over. This fellow was too fierce. No matter what opponent it faced, it would rush forward with an indomitable will. Boom! Han Tian punched out in the air, and a huge fish shadow whizzed out, rolling over. The 3 demonic cats sensed danger, and the tails behind their butts moved at the same time. Their figures suddenly sped up, and they slightly tilted to the side, avoiding the fish shadow's direct attack. The 3 demonic cats were extremely fast in the air, like fish in water. They all revealed their sharp claws, and the sound of flesh being cut could be heard in the air. Han Tian's figure landed, and there were many bloody wounds on his body. Every wound was very deep, and one could even see the eerie white bones. The metal chains on his body had already broken, and they fell to the ground. Blood flowed down like sweat, but there was no trace of fear in Han Tian's eyes. He stared at the 3 demonic cats not far away, and his whole body released a frightening, murderous intent. Freedom. What he wanted was freedom. There were only 5 matches left. As long as he won these 5 matches, he would be free. However, he did not know that freedom was just a trap that the Blood Death Arena had set for him. It was to make him crazy, to make him give his best in battle, and to attract more people's attention. Freedom had always been an impossible thing. Oh no! Nye Tian saw this scene from afar, and his heart involuntarily sank. In just one exchange, Han Tian had been seriously injured. Even the Heavenly Evolution True could not quickly heal his wounds. Chapter 777. In the public square, The crowd watched the bloody scene with fiery eyes. More blood, more deaths. Only then could they feel excited. Come! Han Tian stood where he was and suddenly roared. His eyes were bloodshot, and his petrified fists grew even bigger. He didn't speak much, but every word he said was powerful. The three demon cats were positioned in three different positions, forming a triangular formation as they charged towards Han Tian. The demonic cats were bloodthirsty. Fresh blood made them even more violent. The three demonic cats' eyes were bloodshot, and they emitted a cold and violent aura. Whoosh! 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 The three demonic cats moved at the same time. The air was filled with ear-piercing, whistling sounds. They shot out like arrows. This time, Han Tian did not move. He stood where he was and stared at one of the demon cats with a murderous look in his eyes. Three figures instantly attacked, and in a flash, they arrived in front of Han Tian. The air was filled with cold light. Three claws were aimed at Han Tian's head. Watch out! Seeing this, Yu Jiao's heart jumped to her throat, and she shouted. If he was caught, Han Tian's brain would explode. At the moment of life and death, Han Tian suddenly moved his head. His eyes flashed with murderous intent, and he punched. Bang! There was a muffled sound in the air. A black shadow was sent flying hundreds of meters away. When it landed, it twitched a few times and died on the spot. At the same time, on Han Tian's chest and back, there were many more wounds. Blood was gushing out. The crowd was stunned. They realized that Han Tian was risking his life. He didn't dodge at all. He was waiting for the three-tails demonic cat to attack, and then he would give it a fatal blow. His method was stupid, but it was very effective. Although the wounds on his body worsened, he had successfully killed a three-tails demonic cat. The three-tails demonic cat was fast and powerful, but its defense was weak. It was far weaker than the armored one-horned rhinoceros. It couldn't withstand Han Tian's Sky Stone Fist. After successfully killing a three-tailed demonic cat, Han Tian's lips curled into a smile, and the hope in his eyes increased. He ignored the wounds on his body and locked his gaze on another demonic cat. The remaining two three-tailed demon cats were clearly much more cautious. Their scarlet eyes stared at the cold sky as they paced back and forth. However, they did not attack rashly. As such, Han Tian finally had a chance to catch his breath. The true will of heaven's amplification circulated within his body, and the wounds on his body slowly healed. The three-tailed demon cat's attack power was very strong. If Han Tian didn't have the heavenly stone body, which made his martial body far superior to martial artists of the same level, he would already be a corpse at this moment. A martial artist with a celestial stone body would have a celestial stone surging within their body. It was a type of extremely fine sand and stone that could be separated or combined. It flowed through the martial artist's four limbs and hundreds of meridians, greatly increasing the strength of the martial body. Han Tian's body slowly healed, and the blood gradually stopped flowing. His complexion also looked a little better. You two little bastards, tear him apart. Right at this moment, the gray-robed old man hidden in the sky let out a sharp howl. The two demonic cats in the bloody death arena immediately reacted. They moved and wagged their tails, increasing their speed once again. Roar! Two figures were like the wind and lightning, leaping high into the air and flying over Han Tian's head, simultaneously letting out a strange roar. Swoosh! Swoosh! In the void, a cold light flashed, and two sharp claws appeared, grabbing towards Han Tian's chest, wanting to tear his body apart. Puff! Puff! Han Tian didn't have time to react, and his chest was directly pierced by the sharp claws, dripping with blood like a fountain. Roar! The two demonic cats let out a strange cry again and opened their sharp mouths, revealing their white teeth, biting towards Han Tian's neck. When the crowd saw this scene, they all held their breath, as if they could already see the bloody scene of Han Tian's head being directly bitten off. Oh no! Nye Tian's heart sank, and he wanted to jump up, but at this moment, something strange happened. Just as the two demonic cats were about to bite off Han Tian's neck, the latter suddenly opened his hands and directly grabbed the tails of the two demonic cats. The two demonic cats' bodies froze in the air, and immediately after, they couldn't move even an inch. Dying. At this moment, Han Tian let out a deep roar, and both his hands suddenly swung. Bang! The two demonic cats' bodies spun half a circle in the air and fiercely crashed into each other. Immediately, flesh and blood flew everywhere, and fresh blood was dripping everywhere. Because the strength of this swing was too strong, the two demonic cats' tails were directly torn off, and their bodies smashed heavily onto the ground. Han Tian seized the opportunity, not giving the demonic cats any chance. He suddenly jumped up high, and like a giant boulder, he smashed towards the two demonic cats. Puff! Puff! Han Tian's body landed, and he stepped on each demonic cat's head, and blood splattered everywhere. It was extremely bloody. The two demonic cats' heads were directly turned into meat paste, and they couldn't be more dead. Han Tian's body moved, and with each kick, the three demonic cats' bodies were directly kicked away. The three-tailed demon cats were all killed. Seeing this scene clearly, the crowd was deathly silent at first, and then immediately burst into thunderous cheers. No one thought that Han Tian would be able to turn the situation around in this kind of situation. Such bravery was truly terrifying. Nie Tian, he won. Yu Jiao reacted after a long time, and suddenly excitedly hugged Nie Tian's arm, and joyfully shouted. Nie Tian turned back to look at Yu Jiao, slightly speechless. Han Tian had won. Why was this little girl so happy? Han Tian's victory caused Nie Tian to heave a sigh of relief, but his eyes were filled with even more intense worry. He knew that the blood field would not let Han Tian go just like that. In the blood field, Han Tian's face was pale. He was currently in a weakened state, and his energy was almost depleted. The wounds on his body had not completely healed, and he urgently needed to rest. Han Tian walked step by step and moved towards the exit of the blood field. Han Tian, where are you going? At this time, the gray-robed elder appeared again, and his eyes emitted a poisonous light as he shouted coldly. Today's competition is over. I need to rest. Han Tian's figure paused, but he did not turn back, and said coldly. In the past, he only needed to fight one match a day, and today he had already fought 2 matches, which was enough. Rest. The gray-robed elder laughed coldly, and said, Han Tian, you seem to have forgotten your identity. You are a slave, and I am your master. You can only rest when I let you rest. And today, I don't want you to rest. Han Tian's gaze froze, and he turned back to look at the elder in the air. What do you mean? You have to continue fighting. The gray-robed elder laughed coldly, and said, Let me tell you, today you have to complete 25 matches. After 25 matches, you will be a free man, and if you can't finish, you will die in the blood field. The cold and emotionless voice fell, with a strong sense of mockery. Chapter 778. After the elder in gray spoke, he stared at Han Tian coldly, mocking him. Han Tian stood rooted to the ground, his expression complicated. He didn't think that the Blood Death Ground had prepared everything and wanted him dead today. Originally, he thought he was only one step away from freedom, but it turned out that he was only one step away from death. The Blood Death Ground never intended to give freedom to slaves like them. The so-called freedom was actually a bloody trap. This heavy blow was too much for Han Tian to handle. His body quivered, and he almost fell to the ground. Everyone, Han Tian will continue to fight. Do you want to watch? The elder in gray ignored Han Tian's reaction as he scanned the crowd and shouted, Yes, continue the competition. Continue the battle. Finish the 25 battles. The crowd was going crazy as they shouted crazily. At this moment, Han Tian's heart hit rock bottom. From heaven to hell, his eyes were filled with desperation. Wait. At this moment, a voice of objection rang out. The voice wasn't loud, but it was as if there was a strange force that allowed everyone to hear it clearly. The crowd followed the voice and looked over. The one who spoke was a young man around 18 or 19 years old. His face was calm and his eyes were determined. The one who spoke was none other than Nie Tian. This time, he had come for Han Tian, so how could he just watch as the latter died? No matter what, he had to get Han Tian out of here. The elder in gray glanced at Nietan, and his eyes darkened. He then chuckled. Mister, what do you have to say? Nietan leapt into the air like a sharp sword that could slice through the sky. I heard that slaves from the Blood Death ground can be bought and sold. I want to buy this slave. Nietan stood in midair at the same level as the elder in gray and said softly, Buy this slave? The elder in gray strangely laughed, as if he had just heard a joke. The crowd below heard Nietan's words and roared with laughter. The way they looked at him was full of disdain. Nietan frowned. He had heard that slave from the Blood Death ground could be bought and sold. The gray-robed old man laughed enough and said, Young master, are you a new fish? Yes. Nietan did not hide it and nodded slightly. The gray-robed old man raised his brows and said, Perhaps you still don't know, but the Blood Death field does allow the sale of slaves, but they are only ordinary slaves. If a slave won more than 15 times in a row, he could no longer be sold. Such slaves would either win their own freedom or die on the battlefield. Han Tian has already won 21 matches in a row. No one can buy him away. Nietan's eyes suddenly darkened. There was actually such a rule. He thought for a moment and immediately understood. The Blood Death ground only sold ordinary slaves, not slaves with talent, because they were afraid of revenge. Just think about it. If a martial artist like Han Tian walked out of the Blood Death arena and one day grew into a true powerhouse, he would definitely return to the Blood Death arena. At that time, it would be the end of the Blood Death arena. As for those ordinary slaves, even if they were bought, they wouldn't be able to become too powerful in the future and pose no threat to the Blood Death ground. This rule was truly vicious. It completely sealed off the path of survival for talented martial artists in the Blood Death arena. New fish, hurry up and roll down. Don't embarrass yourself here. You still want to buy Han Tian? Why don't you weigh your own weight first? Is it enough? If Han Tian could be bought and sold, he would have been bought long ago. Why would I wait for you to come? The crowd taunted Nietan, laughing and taunting him without the slightest scruple. Nietan did not care about these people. A hint of worry appeared in the corner of his eyes. He did not expect the Blood Death ground to have such a rule. It seemed like it would not be easy to take Han Tian away. Young master, hurry up and go down. Han Tian's battle is about to begin. The gray-robed old man's eyes twitched coldly and said with a chuckle. Nietan looked at the old man and then at Han Tian. His figure moved and he landed on the ground. Big brother Nietan, Han Tian cannot be bought. What should we do? Yu Jiao looked at Nietan and asked nervously. Nietan shook his head slightly. He did not know what to do now and could only play it by ear. The probability of Han Tian completing all 25 battles was almost zero. Nietan made a decision in his heart. When Han Tian was in danger, he would make a move. However, he did not know how strong the defense of the Blood Death ground was. It should not be too weak. Since the Blood Death ground could exist in the Imperial City, the power behind it must be very strong. At a certain moment, Han Tian looked at Nietan with an indescribable determination in his eyes. After a while, the battle continued. In the sky above the Blood Death ground, a metal cage appeared again. In the cage was a group of strange blackbirds. The strange birds were black and had no feathers. Each of them was 5 to 6 meters long and had 4 wings on their back. They looked like bats, but their throats were scarlet red, as if there was a ball of fire burning there. 4-winged fire bats. Seeing the strange birds in the cage, Nietan's eyes trembled and he shouted the name of the strange birds. In Han Tian's 22nd battle, his opponents were more difficult to deal with than the armored one-horned rhinoceros and a 3-tailed demon cat. They were 4-winged fire bats, and a group at that. The 4-winged fire bat was a 7th-rank wind and fire dual-elemental spirit beast. There was a demonic fire in its body, which had a strong burning ability. Ordinary heavenly evolution realm warriors could not resist the burning power of the demonic fire. Although Han Tian had a celestial stone body, he had not matured, and it was difficult for him to resist the demonic fire. Whoosh! The cage opened and dozens of four-winged firebats rushed out. There was an ear-piercing screech in the air, and a powerful pressure pressed down from the sky. Han Tian looked up with a rare look of fear in his eyes. He could feel that the four-winged firebats were much more terrifying than the three-tailed demon cat. The three-tailed demon cats had already seriously injured him. How could he deal with dozens of four-winged firebats? At that moment, the four-winged firebats swooped down and hovered above Han Tian's head, releasing a creepy aura. The demonic fire in their throats surged, ready to attack at any time. Fight! Suddenly, Han Tian roared and took the initiative to attack. He punched the air and a huge fist whistled through the air. The shadow of the fist was so powerful that the void suddenly shook violently. The next moment, the sound of flapping wings was heard. Dozens of four-winged firebats flashed and disappeared, directly avoiding the attack of the shadow of the fist. The four-winged firebats reacted very quickly, and their speed was even faster than the three-tailed demon cat. Han Tian's face changed when his punch missed, and panic appeared in his eyes. At that moment, the four-winged firebats suddenly went berserk. The crimson in their throats suddenly expanded, and dozens of demonic fires shot out, like an overwhelming rain of fire pressing down. The crowd held their breath and did not even blink at the soul-stirring scene. There was no way Han Tian could avoid so many demonic fires. If he was hit by the demonic fire, he would die. Seeing the flames in his eyes spread, Han Tian's eyes flashed with despair. Freedom was something he could never have in this lifetime. However, at the moment of despair, he suddenly felt a force coming at him at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 779. Just as Han Tian was about to be engulfed by the demonic fire, something strange happened. A dark blue shield lit up on his body, surging with power. Boom! The demonic fire started a prairie fire in the air, bombarding Han Tian's body crazily. However, it was absorbed by the dark blue shield around his body, and he was not hurt at all. Gasp! The crowd was stunned by this scene that suddenly occurred. They were first stunned, and then their gazes froze. All of them gasped while their expressions became astounded and astounded. The crowd was not shocked by the strange power of the dark blue shield, but by the fact that someone dared to interfere in the blood-death battle. It's the new fish. At this time, someone noticed that a familiar figure appeared in the sky above the blood-death field. It was the person who wanted to buy Han Tian, Nie Tian. Countless people's eyes were focused on Nie Tian. Their gazes were strange, and there was a strange look in them. Nie Tian, however, didn't pay any attention to them. He descended to Han Tian's side and asked, "Are you all right?" Just now, Nie Tian used the sky armor of Water Pole to block all the demonic fire attacks for Han Tian. The sky armor of Water Pole had a strong defense, and it had a great restraining effect on the demonic fire. Therefore, Han Tian was saved. Han Tian didn't answer Nie Tian's question. Instead, he looked at him in shock and asked, "Why did you save me?" Han Tian didn't expect that someone would save him at this time. He was already prepared to die. Even if he didn't die in this battle, there were still 3 more battles, and the opponents in each battle were stronger. He didn't have any chance to finish the 25 battles. Was it worth it to save a slave who was going to die now? Nie Tian smiled and said, "I need your help. Before that, you have to stay alive. I have to take you away." "Take me away." Han Tian's eyes trembled violently. His heart, which had already lost all hope, suddenly palpitated. But soon, disappointment appeared in his eyes again. With Nie Tian's strength, could he take him away? Could an 18 or 19-year-old teenager fight against the blood-death field? The answer was impossible. No matter how heaven-defying Nie Tian's strength was, it was impossible for him to resist the blood-death field unless he was a peak expert of a first-rate empire. Trust me, Nie Tian naturally knew what Han Tian was thinking. A sharp glint flashed in his eyes as he calmly said, "I, Nie Tian, will definitely keep my word." Han Tian sensed the determination in Nie Tian's eyes, and his mind couldn't help but tremble. He then nodded his head and said, "I believe in you." The corners of Nie Tian's mouth curled up slightly, but he did not say anything else. At this time, Dozens of four-winged fire bats came to their senses and gathered above Nietion's head, making him their first target. Come on, it's just a few dozen sparrows. I'll play with you. Nietion looked at the black mass above his head, and his lips curled into a cold smile. His whole body released a terrifying sword intent. The sword will soar into the sky and spread out, enveloping the space within a few hundred meters, releasing a cold, killing intent. Little bastard, you're asking for it. The gray-robed elder appeared above his head and shouted angrily. He did not expect that Nietion would dare to fight in the blood-death field. He was simply courting death. Nietion ignored him, focusing all his attention on the dozens of four-winged fire bats. If he couldn't even handle a few dozen fire bats, taking Han Tian away would be an empty promise. Nietion activated the Sword of Divine Wheel, and the space within a few hundred meters was enveloped by it. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The four-winged fire bats, who were enveloped by the terrifying sword will, seemed to feel threatened and let out ear-piercing squeaks. Master, this demonic fire is good stuff. Don't waste it. Inside the chaotic original coffin, the corpse demon king's voice was heard. They're all yours, Nietion said with a faint smile, his expression calm. Thank you, Master. Corpse demon king chuckled. He was ready to enjoy the fruits of Su Mo's labor. Actually, staying by Nietion's side was not bad. It was safe, and he could continuously improve his strength. It was very comfortable. After devouring many original spirits, Corpse Demon King's current strength was also at the Heavenly Evolution Stage 1. Moreover, he had yet to completely refine the original spirits in his body, and his strength was still increasing rapidly. Walala! At this time, the four-winged fire bats couldn't wait any longer. They all swooped down. Dozens of balls of demonic fire appeared in the air. They connected into one in the air and pressed down on Nietion. The moment the demonic fires appeared, the space within a few hundred meters became a furnace, and even the air became dense. Good timing. Nietion's lips curled up in a creepy manner, and his entire body released the power of thunder. Instantly, the Sword of Divine Wheel was filled with the power of thunder, and lightning surged in the void, releasing a destructive aura. Boom! 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 The four-winged fire bats were engulfed by the power of thunder, and their bodies could not withstand the violence of the lightning. They all exploded into a pool of blood in the air. The sudden scene stunned everyone present. The scene of so many four-winged fire bats exploding together was too bloody and impactful. Moreover, Nietion's strength was too strange, and it was terrifying. Dozens of four-winged fire bats were all exploded into a pool of blood in the air. At the same time, the overwhelming demonic fires fell, pressing down on Nietion. Balls of black light surged out of Nietion's body, and in the blink of an eye, he devoured all the demonic fires. Thank you, Master. Chapter 780. As soon as Nietion finished speaking, the entire bloody death field fell into a brief silence. Everyone stared at Nietion with a strange gaze, wondering if this kid had taken the wrong medicine. He actually ran to the blood death arena to cause trouble. What kind of place was the blood death field? It was a forbidden area of the imperial city. Even if those nobles came here, they would have to behave with their tails between their legs. Take Han Tian away? A long while later, the gray-clothed old man suddenly laughed as if he had heard a joke. Soon after, his expression darkened as he coldly said, "Little brat, do you know what kind of place the blood death ground is? You came to the wrong place to behave atrociously here. Let me tell you, as long as you step into the bloody arena, there's only one ending for you, death." As soon as the word die rang out, the air above the blood death arena suddenly trembled. Then a dozen or so black-robed figures appeared in the air, all of them wearing blood-red masks, looking extremely sinister. Nietion's gaze trembled. These black-clothed martial artists who suddenly appeared were all Heavenly Evolution 5th-level martial artists. Each of their auras was powerful and extremely oppressive. The power behind the blood death field was indeed powerful. The strength of these dark guards had exceeded Nyetian's expectations. What made him even more fearful was that the gray-robed old man was actually at the 9th level of the heavenly evolution realm. Although a 9th level heavenly evolution realm cultivation was not considered the top in the Dark Moon Empire, it was definitely not weak. This old man's status in the Blood Death ground was definitely not high, but his strength was already so terrifying. It was easy to imagine how many experts were hidden behind the Blood Death ground. It was probably impossible for Nyetian to force his way out. The gray-robed old man saw the shock on Nyetian's face and chuckled. "Brad, I don't care who you are. As long as you step into the arena of death, I won't let you walk out alive. There can only be blood and death in the bloody arena." As the cold and emotionless voice fell, the gray-robed elder looked at Nyetian with an extremely strange gaze, as if he was looking at a corpse. In his eyes, Nyetian was nothing but a dead body. Going against the Blood Death arena meant that there was no chance of survival. "Look at this." Nyetian's face darkened as he threw something at the old man. The gray-robed elder raised his hand, and a golden token appeared in his hand. There was a single word inscribed on it: Shao. He was slightly taken aback, and his expression changed. He asked coldly, "You work for Crown Prince Xian Shao?" The token that Nyetian had tossed to him was the one that he had obtained from Dao Quanxing. Nyetian believed that with Xian Zhao's domineering ways, even the Bloody Field would have heard of his name. Perhaps he would be a deterrent. Judging from the gray-robed elder's reaction, he had guessed correctly. "Now, can I take him away?" Nyetian didn't answer. Instead, he smiled and said. The muscles on the gray-robed old man's face began to twitch, and his expression became extremely gloomy. He did not expect Nyetian to be crowned Prince Xian Zhao's man. Xian Zhao was extremely famous in the Black Moon Empire. Although the force behind the Bloody Field was not afraid of Xian Zhao, it would not be a good thing to offend him. After all, the Bloody Field was in the Black Moon Empire's territory. It was better to be cautious when it came to provoking the local tyrant. At this moment, the crowd was also stirred up. Their eyes were burning as if they were anticipating something to happen. Xian Zhao and the Bloody Field were both difficult forces to deal with. If these two forces were to clash, it would definitely be a good show. "Lad, since you're Crown Prince Xian Zhao's man, and this is your first time coming to the Bloody Field, I can forgive you for not knowing the rules." The gray-robed elder pondered for a while and said in a much gentler tone, "Leave the Bloody Field now and promise that you will never come back. In that case, I can pretend that nothing happened." "How about that?" The gray-robed elder softened. He did not want to offend Xian Zhao. "I can leave, and I will never come back." Nyetian's eyes were calm and unwavering. He said, "But I want to take Han Tian with me." "You." The gray-robed elder's face suddenly stiffened. He did not expect that after the Bloody Field had already given in, Nyetian would still want a mile after getting an inch and wanted to take Han Tian away. He did not respect the Bloody Field at all. "What if I don't let you take him away?" The gray-robed elder suppressed the anger in his heart and asked coldly, "I must take him away." Nyetian's answer was simple and decisive, leaving no room for negotiation. "Lad!" The gray-robed elder was completely enraged. He roared in a deep voice, "Don't think that the Bloody Field will not dare to touch you just because you are Xian Zhao's man. Let me tell you, even if Xian Zhao comes personally, he will not be able to take the people of the Bloody Field away." "Fine." Suddenly, Nyetian also roared angrily. He said fiercely, "Then let's fight." Since a fight was inevitable, Nyetian was not afraid of anyone. He was confident that he could use absolute tremor to restrain the gray-robed elder in an instant. As long as he controlled the gray-robed elder, he might be able to use him as a hostage and leave the Bloody Field safely. However, what Nyetian was worried about was that the gray-robed elder's status was not high enough to be a hostage. "Let's fight then." The gray-robed elder was furious. He shouted to the men in black behind him, "Everyone, listen up. Kill this lad." Yes. More than 10 Heavenly Evolution Level 5 martial artists responded in unison with great vigor. Nietion slowly raised his head and locked his gaze on the gray-robed elder. He was already prepared to cut off all means of retreat. However, just as he was about to activate absolute tremor, a cold and sinister voice rang out. Wait! The voice was choked, as if it had come from hell. It carried a sinister and cold aura. As this voice rang out, the figures of more than 10 martial artists in black froze in midair, not daring to move again. Young master! The gray-robed elder was stunned when he heard this voice. Then, a look of pleasant surprise appeared on his face. Just now, he was still worried that this matter was handled wrongly. Now that the young master was here, he was relieved. The next moment, a figure in white walked over from the void. Everyone's gazes trembled as they looked at the figure walking over from the void. The person who arrived was a young man who looked to be in his 20s. He was dressed in white, and his footsteps were light. His face was devilishly handsome, and his eyes exuded a sinister aura, giving people a very strange feeling. Young master, Nietion also looked at this man, and his gaze could not help but tremble. This man was not old, but his strength was very strong. He was actually at the first level of heaven. To be able to reach the first level of heaven at such a young age, his martial talent could be rated as stunning. The newcomer's gaze flickered as he stared directly at Nietion. He squeezed out a smile and said indifferently, I am Mo Yoshang. May I ask how I should address you? Nietion looked straight into the other party's eyes and replied calmly. The moment Mo Yoshang opened his mouth, he appeared very amiable. However, his voice was somewhat ear-piercing in Nietion's ears, carrying a strong sense of mockery and playfulness. Nietion reckoned that with Mo Yoshang's age and strength, he should also be one of the 9 demons of the Meru world. Chapter 781. Everyone was baffled by Desolate Mo's appearance and how polite he was to Nietion. However, the gray-robed elder's face was calm, and a cold smile hung on his lips. He understood Desolate Mo very well. He was always this polite to everyone. But when this young master was not polite, it was absolutely unimaginably cruel. Xian Zhao's people actually came to my blood death ground to behave atrociously. Interesting. Desolate Mo looked at Nietion with a playful expression, not concealing the contempt in his eyes. He could not understand where a mere second-level heaven evolution martial artist got the courage to behave atrociously in the blood death ground. Nietion stood beside Han Tian and secretly channeled some essence energy into the latter. He was already prepared to charge out. Suddenly, Desolate Mo stared at Nietion and asked, Nietion, do you really want to take this slave away? Yes. Nietion nodded calmly, but he was extremely nervous. He could sense that Desolate Mo was an extremely dangerous person, not much better than Xian Zhao. Good. Desolate Mo smiled strangely and said, Since you are Xian Zhao's man, this young master will give you a chance. Saying that, he looked at the gray-robed elder and asked, Old Chun, how many matches does that slave have left? The gray-robed elder called Old Chun nodded respectfully and said, Including this match, he has already won 22 matches in a row. He still has 3 matches left. 3 matches. Desolate Mo muttered to himself. His gaze swept across Han Tian and then landed on Nietion. He smiled lazily and said, Nietion, this slave still has 3 more matches before he can regain his freedom. This young master will give you a chance to replace him in the remaining 3 matches. If you win, you can take him away. If you lose, you can only lose your life here. How about it? Are you willing? Sure. Nietion agreed without the slightest hesitation. Since things had come to this, he had no other choice. If he charged out forcefully, the risk was too great. He knew that in the next 3 matches, the enemies would be stronger and stronger, but he was willing to take the risk. Young master is wise. This old servant is in awe. Old Chin bowed slightly towards Sorrow Mo with a fawning expression. Sorrow Mo's move was truly crafty, allowing Nietion to replace Han Tian for the remaining 3 matches. The next 3 matches will be decided by the Blood Death Arena. Nietion had no chance of leaving this place alive. Even if Nietian died in the blood death arena, Sorrow Mo would still give him an explanation when Xian Xiao ran over. It was Nietian who volunteered to take the place of the slave and die, so he had no one else to blame. You. Han Tian looked at Nietian. He wanted to say something, but didn't know what to say. Nietian calmly smiled and said, "Trust me." Han Tian nodded heavily. For the first time, he felt the warmth of being cared for. A person he had never met, but was willing to risk his life for him. This kindness, Han Tian, would remember it forever. Following that, Han Tian left. In the huge blood death arena, only Nietian was left. It was empty and deathly silent. "Young master, for this brat's first match, what opponent should we arrange?" Old Chin stood beside Sorrow Mo and asked softly. "The blood death arena has recently trained a batch of blood poison wolf bees. Let's use this brat to test their power." Sorrow Mo stretched his waist and said lazily, "Okay." Old Chin agreed, his face revealing a sinister expression. Very quickly, a huge iron cage appeared in the air. Inside the cage was actually a group of scarlet poison wolf bees. Voila! A small door opened in the iron cage, and countless scarlet poison wolf bees flew out, emitting an ear-piercing buzzing sound. When Nietian saw the mass of scarlet poison wolf bees in the air, his gaze couldn't help but tighten. Every blood poison wolf bee was the size of a palm. Its entire body was scarlet like blood, and its carapace was as hard as iron. The blood poison wolf bees above Nietian's head numbered in the thousands. They swept down from the sky like falling flames. "Brat, the blood poison of the blood poison wolf bees can instantly paralyze the nerves of a martial artist. Even a peak heavenly evolution martial artist will find it hard to resist. Just obediently accept your death." Old Chin looked at Nietian with a sinister gaze, sneering in his heart. Sorrow Mo held his chin, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile, preparing to watch a good show. In the blood death arena, countless blood poison wolf bees swooped down, forming a huge mass like a curtain of fire that covered the sky. A scorching aura spread out, causing Nietian to have a feeling of difficulty breathing. "Master, be careful. These wolf bees are poisonous." Corpse Luo Demon Lord's voice rang out, slightly anxious. He was worried for Nietian. And on the viewing platform of the square, Yu Jiao's heart jumped to her throat. She didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Even though they were separated by thousands of meters, she could still feel the pressure released by the blood poison wolf bees. Amidst the overwhelming red curtain, the blood poison wolf bees braved the flames and charged towards Nietian at an extremely fast speed. Nietian could feel that although the blood poison wolf bees were small, their defense was even more terrifying than that of the armored one-horned rhinoceros. The scarlet carapace on their bodies was abnormally hard. Nietian felt a scorching aura pressing down on him. The yuan meridians in his body revolved frantically, and suddenly, a surging sword intent surged out, turning into thousands of terrifying sword shadows in the air, blasting towards the red curtain above his head. Crackle! There were explosive sounds in the air, and countless blood poison wolf bees fell to the ground. The flames on their small bodies flickered as they struggled painfully on the ground. Seeing this scene, Nietian's eyes narrowed, and he said in astonishment, "So weak?" When the crowd saw this strange scene, their eyes also trembled. They didn't understand what was going on. The venomous blood wolf wasps had charged at Nietian aggressively, yet Nietian had killed them just like that. This was too strange. However, just as Nietian finished speaking, he suddenly heard a buzzing sound in his ears. The blood poison wolf bees that had fallen to the ground suddenly flapped their wings and came to life. Nietian's eyes widened. He didn't expect that the blood poison wolf bees would play dead. The blood poison wolf bees came to life and attacked Nietian fiercely. Nietian reacted extremely quickly. A layer of golden light lit up around his body, and the dragon scale shield was activated. Bang! 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 Countless blood poison wolf bees collided with the dragon scale shield, creating a dull sound. At this moment, Nietion's entire body was surrounded by the blood-poison wolf bees, and his entire body was submerged in the scarlet flames. Although the dragon scale shield could block the blood-poison wolf bees' attacks, it couldn't block the power of the blood-poison wolf bees. Nietion felt a strange power invading his body, invading his limbs and meridians. An intense pain spread throughout his body, and in an instant, Nietion almost fainted from the pain. As the power of the blood-poison wolf bees invaded his meridians, Nietion actually felt his body slowly becoming numb. The power of the blood-poison wolf bees was too strong. Even Nietion couldn't resist it for a moment. At this moment, the 9 dragon meridians began to revolve, and waves of dragon power surged through his limbs and meridians. A loud dragon roar sounded in Nietion's head. Chapter 782. In the plaza, everyone's eyes were fixed on the scarlet flames in the blood death field. Nietion's figure had already been submerged in the flames for a long time. That kid is dead. The crowd's hearts trembled. Nietion had been wrapped up by the blood-poison wolf bees. He was probably a pile of bones now. Big brother Nietion. Yu Jiao's eyes moistened as she looked at the scarlet flames in the blood death field. Meanwhile, the battle between Nietion and the blood-poison wolf bees was still ongoing in the blood death field. Of course, he was not dead. Not only did he not die, but he also felt the strength in his body continuously increase. When the blood-poison power invaded Nietion's body, it triggered the resistance of the dragon vein in his body. As the blood-poison power invaded, the resistance of the 9 dragon veins became even more intense. Nietion could clearly feel that there were purple lightning bolts surging within his body, and he could hear loud dragon roars echoing in his ears. As the power of lightning surged, Nietion's body seemed to become a sea of lightning. The blood-poison power surged into the sea of lightning. Not only did it not harm him, but it also nourished the sea of lightning, making it even more powerful. Thousands of blood-poison wolf bees continuously released the blood-poison power, and Nietion's strength continued to increase. The power of the blood poison was instantly devoured and refined by the sea of lightning. Nietion's strength also increased. 3rd level heavenly evolution. 4th level heavenly evolution. The moment the power of the blood poison was completely refined by the sea of lightning, Nietion's strength directly increased by 2 levels, from the 2nd level of heavenly evolution to the 4th level of heavenly evolution. Nietion felt that his body was undergoing some kind of mysterious change. His blood turned dark gold and flowed with a strange luster. His bones also became stronger, and every inch of his flesh and blood was filled with terrifying power. It seemed that the power of the stars and the 9-star dragon vein had caused a miraculous change in Nietion's body, causing his martial body to become even more powerful than a heaven and earth spirit body martialist. As Nietion absorbed the power of the blood poison wolf bees around him kept falling. After falling to the ground, the bodies of these wolf bees became dim. After struggling on the ground for a while, they died completely. This time, the blood poison wolf bee was not playing dead. It was really dead. The blood poison's power was equivalent to the blood venom wolf wasp's blood chi. When Nietion absorbed the blood poison's power, the blood venom wolf wasp's life force was drained and it died. Old Chun and Death Sorrow Path watched from the sky. They had originally believed that Nietion had already died. But when the crimson red in front of them slowly dimmed and Nietion's figure appeared again, they realized that Nietion was not dead at all. Boom! Just as Nietion's figure appeared, a terrifying sword will soared into the sky. The brilliance of the sword blossomed in the sky, erupting with a destructive aura. The few remaining poisonous wasps on Nietion's body were directly shattered, turning into a bloody mist in the air. How is this possible? When Death Sorrow Path and Old Chun saw this scene, they were flabbergasted and exclaimed at the same time. Nietion was clearly enveloped by the blood venom wolf bees, and the blood poison's power had already invaded his body. He should have died from the poison and turned into a pile of white bones. How could he still stand up? The blood venom wolf bee's power of blood poison was something that even a ninth-level heavenly evolution martial artist could not resist. How could Niet Tion, who only had the strength of a second-level heavenly evolution, be safe and sound? All of this was too strange. Death Sorrow Path and Old Chun could not figure it out. When the crowd saw Niet Tion's figure appear again, they sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. Their eyes were filled with surprise, shock, and fear. No one knew what happened. How could Niet Tion survive being enveloped by the blood venom wolf bees? It was simply a miracle. Big brother Niet Tion. When Yu Jiao saw Niet Tion's figure again, she cried tears of joy, and tears flowed out from the corners of her eyes. Niet Tion stood in the blood death arena. His figure was like a sword, as though he wanted to split this piece of sky. Something's wrong. At this time, Death Sorrow Path and Old Chun sensed that something was wrong at the same time. They exclaimed in shock, and their faces changed. It was even uglier than a wilted eggplant. The two suddenly realized that Niet Tion's aura had become stronger. Much stronger. After being invaded by the power of blood poison, not only did he not die, but his strength had also become stronger. How is this possible? Who in the world was Niet Tion? Why was his body so strange? Death Sorrow Path and Old Chun had countless questions in their hearts. The expressions on their faces turned into astonishment and shock. At this time, Niet Tion suddenly raised his head and stared at Death Sorrow Path with a cold gaze. He said indifferently, "The first match is over." His voice was very calm, but it carried extreme provocation. Death Sorrow Path looked at Niet Tion and frowned. His face was so gloomy that it was dripping water. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he squeezed out a smile. He said word by word, "2 more matches." Death Sorrow Path had already discovered that Niet Tion's strength had increased by a full 2 levels compared to just now. This was too strange. Death Sorrow Path had never seen such a thing in his entire life. At this time, in his heart, he had listed Niet Tion as a person he must kill. In the next 2 matches, Niet Tion must die. "Young master, what about the next match?" Old Chun took a step forward, trembling with fear. He was actually very nervous, obviously very afraid of Death Sorrow Path. Cold-blooded. Death Sorrow Path's eyes trembled as he spat out these 2 words. Cold-blooded. When Old Chun heard this name, his body could not help but tremble. His expression changed, and he said with a trembling voice, "Young master, are you really going to let Cold-blooded go?" "Yes." Death Sorrow Path nodded his head, his eyes still fixed on Niet Tion. If the latter did not die in a few days, he would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. "Okay, this old servant will go arrange it." Old Chun agreed, and his figure flashed and disappeared. Seeing Death Sorrow Path leave, Niet Tion's face could not help but sink. He had clearly heard the conversation between the two just now. From Old Chun's reaction, Cold-blooded should be a very terrifying opponent. At this time, there was no fear in Niet Tion's heart, and he was actually a little excited. He was also very curious about who this Cold-blooded was. The blood death field fell into a moment of dead silence. Then, Old Chun's figure appeared again, a cold smile hanging on his face. He nodded slightly to Death Sorrow Path and said, "Young master, everything has been arranged." "Yes." Death Sorrow Path nodded his head, and his expression relaxed a little. He laughed coldly in his heart. "Niet Tion, this young master wants to see just how strong you are." Rumble. In the next moment, a loud bang suddenly rang out in the blood death field. A metal door opened, and a figure dashed out from within, directly landing less than 10 meters away from Niet Tion. "Huh?" Niet Tion looked at the person in front of him and could not help but be stunned. This person's hair was unkempt, and his face was dirty. He did not look old, and his hand was holding a broken blade that was stained with blood. His entire body was emitting a bloody, killing intent. What surprised Niet Tion the most was that this person's body was surging with a very strong blade intent, as if it could cut through everything at any time. This saber intent made this person look like a saber that could kill. Chapter 783. Niet Tion looked at the person in front of him, his gaze turning intent. Without a doubt, The person in front of him was his opponent, cold-blooded. Cold-blooded suddenly lifted his head, his blade-like eyes looking at Nietan, like a blade stabbing over, carrying an extremely strong, oppressive aura. Cold-blooded, bloodthirsty blade. The blade intent on his body was very strong, making his entire person look like a blade. It was just that this blade exuded a bloody aura. Nietan looked at the other party's bloodthirsty eyes, his gaze turning intense slightly. This kind of gaze, calm and austere, only those people who always wandered the borders of life and death would have such a terrifying look. Your blade intent is very strong. Nietan looked at Cold-Blooded and said calmly. Cold-Blooded's blade intent was indeed very strong, even stronger than the Dao Quangxing that Nietan encountered previously. Nietan had encountered many blade users before. Each person's blade intent was different. Yi Linyan's blade intent was domineering. Qiushan's blade intent was majestic. Dao Quangxing's blade intent was insolent, while Cold-Blooded's blade intent was bloodthirsty. Cold-Blooded was the bloodthirsty blade. This kind of blade intent could only be trained after killing many people. Swordsman, take out your sword. Cold-Blooded's icy cold eyes stared at Nietan and said coldly. Blade and sword came from the same source. It was not strange that he could sense that Nietan was a swordsman. Nietan smiled bitterly. He also wanted to take out his sword, but sadly, his sword was not by his side. You want to defeat me without using the sword? Cold-Blooded saw that Nietan did not take out his sword and was slightly stunned. Feeling humiliated, the coldness in his eyes becoming even colder. Make your move. Nietan did not wish to explain too much and replied coolly. To be able to encounter a powerful blade user like Cold-Blooded, Nietan was also very much looking forward to it. Courting death. Cold-Blooded gave a cold roar. The cold-blooded blade in his hand trembled, giving off a shrill blade cry. It actually turned into a formless blade wave, attacking towards Nietan. Nietan took a step forward, sword intent gushing out from his entire body, crushing over like raging waves. Boom! Boom! A violent explosion sounded in the air as the saber intent and the sword intent collided violently. Nietan and Lung Shui retreated several steps at the same time. Cold-Blood was very strong. He was at the 5th level of the Heavenly Evolution realm and was at the Saber Spirit realm. Most importantly, his saber intent was much stronger than Dao Quangxing's. Nietan steadied his body, his eyes slightly surprised. If not for the fact that his strength had just risen by 2 levels, he might not be Lung Shui's opponent in a direct confrontation. The shock in Lung Shui's eyes was even greater. His bloodthirsty eyes were red. Nietan could actually fight evenly with him without using a sword. His sword intent was extremely strong. What's your name? Standing still, Lung Shui asked coldly. His every word, action, and every move was filled with ice-cold, bloodthirsty, killing intent. Nietan replied calmly. Lung Shui's gaze was deep, revealing a rare hint of solemnity as he said, Nietan, your sword intent is very strong. It's the strongest among all the swordsmen I've seen. Lung Shui, your saber intent is also very strong, but it's not the strongest among all the swordsmen I've seen. Nietan had an indifferent look as he replied calmly. Lung Shui's saber intent was sharp and bloodthirsty, but it was not the strongest. It was even much weaker than Yi Linyan. Lung Shui's expression stiffened, and he said in a cold voice, Do you know who I am? You stood on the blood death field. Aren't you a slave? Nietan was slightly stunned. Slave? Lung Shui smiled coldly and said, I, Lung Shui, am a member of the Burial Blade Society. I came to the blood death field in order to cultivate my bloodthirsty saber intent. The number of slaves in the blood death field that died in my hands is uncountable. I want to use their blood and death to forge my bloodthirsty saber. Burial Blade Society. Nietan's gaze tightened. He had never heard of this organization before. However, Lung Shui's words successfully infuriated him. Coming to the blood death field and using other people's lives to forge his own martial Dao Such a person was truly cold-blooded and emotionless. Nye Tian understood. Lung Shui was the killing saber of the Blood Death Field. He specialized in helping the Blood Death Field kill slaves like Han Tian. Lung Shui used the lives of slaves to forge his own saber Dao. At the same time, he also helped the Blood Death Field kill those slaves with terrifying talents. Both sides mutually benefited, each taking what they needed. If Han Tian continued to fight, he would definitely encounter Lung Shui, and he would definitely die in Lung Shui's hands. Unfortunately, the one standing in front of Lung Shui right now was Nye Tian. Nye Tian would become the endpoint of Lung Shui's saber Dao. Nye Tian, you're a pretty good swordsman, but it's a pity that your sword Dao is only at the stage of sword momentum, while I'm at the stage of saber spirit. Now that you've encountered me, you'll only have one ending, death. Lung Shui's eyes regained their coldness. The bloodthirsty saber intent permeated the air, and the stench of blood filled the entire Blood Death Field. Even in the public square outside the Blood Death Field, the spectators could feel the bloodthirsty, killing intent. Lung Shui was known as the bloodthirsty saber by the Blood Death Field. Every time he appeared, no matter what kind of opponent he faced, they would definitely die under his saber. Nye Tian felt the terrifying saber intent permeating the air, but his gaze was fixed on the broken saber in Lung Shui's hand. The blade of Lung Shui. The blade of Lung Shui released a terrifying saber aura. Traces of blood actually flowed on the surface of the blade. It was extremely strange. Nye Tian died. With a shout, Lung Shui took a step forward. The blood-red glow on the blade of Lung Shui intensified. The saber intent bloomed in the air, and an earth-shattering saber intent permeated the air. A blood-red saber shadow slashed down towards Nye Tian. The saber shadow was shocking, and it was extremely sharp, as though it could slice through everything. Nye Tian's gaze was calm. He activated the Sword of Divine Will, and his body became like a sword. The Star Soul Sword Will, the Proud Sword Will, and the Thunderbolt Sword Will. The three types of sword will merged perfectly in the Sword of Divine Will, and the most terrifying sword will radiated from it. Boom! Nye Tian took a step forward. He actually used the Sword of Divine Wheel as a sword and slashed down from the sky. The Sword of Divine Wheel was a space formed by the fusion of the Divine Wheel space and the sword essence. At this moment, Nye Tian did not have a sword in his hand. He had turned the space into a sword. Rumble. In the void, the saber shadow and the sword shadow collided. The two forces strangled each other in the space, resisting and devouring each other. The light of the saber and the shadow of the sword flashed in the space, and the entire space became a world of sabers and swords. Boom! A wave of saber and sword chi blasted out. The air became a sharp blade, and it spread out in all directions. Nye Tian and Lung Shui retreated at the same time, and they retreated to a distance of 100 meters. Even so, the two of them still had countless wounds on their bodies. Nye Tian's figure stabilized. The true will of heaven's divination and the 9 dragon veins took effect at the same time. In the blink of an eye, the wounds on his body had healed. On the other hand, Lung Shui's wounds healed at a much slower speed. His martial body was much weaker than Nye Tian's. A saber user at the spirit of the saber realm is indeed very strong, Nye Tian muttered with a smile on his lips. If he was at the spirit of the sword realm and had a sword in his hand, the exchange just now would have killed Lung Shui. Lung Shui looked at Nye Tian, and his bloodshot eyes could not hide the surprise. Nye Tian did not have a sword in his hand. His sword principal realm was 1 level lower than his, but he could actually fight on par with him. This was strange. The muscles on his face trembled slightly. It was obvious that he was extremely angry. Lung Shui's aura sword, and it was even more terrifying than before. Chapter 784. Cold Blood's saber intent was bloodthirsty and bloodthirsty. Fresh blood made his saber aura even stronger. Very good. Nye Tian smiled faintly, and his aura similarly skyrocketed. It was not easy to encounter a decent opponent. He wanted to properly play with Cold Blood. These two people are so strong. When the crowd saw the scene in the Blood Death arena, their gazes trembled violently. Cold-Blood and Nyetian were both strong enough, especially in Nyetian's strength, which exceeded everyone's expectations. When Cold-Blood went up in the past, regardless of what opponent it was, he would kill them with one saber move. But Nyetian could actually fight Cold-Blood to a draw. It was truly bizarre. Cold-Blood, you must kill him. High up in the sky, Saromo's pair of cold eyes stared fixedly at Nyetian and Cold-Blood. His palms were already sweating. Nyetian's battle prowess was simply too mysterious and unpredictable. He could fight to a draw with Cold-Blood without a sword in his hand. If he had a sword, then it would be incredible. Cold-Blood, slaughter. In the Blood Death arena, Cold-Blood's icy voice sounded out. Immediately, his figure flashed, actually leaving behind an afterimage with each step, extremely bizarre. This time, what Cold-Blood erupted with was not an overwhelming saber aura, but an austere and restrained saber aura. When Nyetian saw this scene, his gaze involuntarily froze. Cold-Blood actually condensed all of his saber aura together, erupting with a horrifying slaughter move. This was the spirit of the saber. The saber user used saber Dao realm to gather all the saber intent in the body, abandoning the vastness of the saber aura to make the saber intent even sharper, killing in one blow. As Cold-Blood stepped out step by step, the surroundings were actually all his afterimages, instantly enveloping Nyetian. It's a slaughter move. Nyetian is dead for sure. When Saromo saw this scene, he actually became excited, his gaze blazing as if he could see the scene of Nyetian being annihilated with one saber move. Even a 9th-level Heaven Evolution martial artist will find it hard to withstand Cold-Blood's slaughter move. After this move, Nyetian is dead for sure. Old Shin by the side was also incredibly excited as he chuckled. The eyes of the crowd became even more fiery. They did not even dare to breathe loudly as they waited for Lung Shue's next sure-kill attack. Nyetian looked around at the cold-blooded afterimages around him. The starry sky eyes allowed his insight to reach a nearly terrifying level. Cold-Blood's afterimage was no different from the real body, but under the starry sky eyes, the real body was moving. Nyetian was able to capture Cold-Blood's position at any time, so he was not flustered. Instead, he was very calm. The cold-blooded killing move was to use afterimages to disrupt the opponent's vision or even to crush the opponent's mentality and then give the opponent a fatal blow. At this time, Nyetian simply closed his eyes. The powerful inside of the starry sky, I formed a picture in his mind. Cold-Blood's figure constantly changed. His speed was extremely fast, but in Nyetian's eyes, he was like a juggling monkey, simply amusing Nyetian. Die! Right at this time, a cold voice sounded out. Cold-Blood's figure turned into a stream of light, attacking towards Nyetian. The killing move gathered all of the saber intent. The power that erupted in an instant was abnormally shocking. The sharp saber light bloomed in the air, destroying everything. The hearts of the crowd trembled fiercely at this moment. This saber move of Cold-Blood was too powerful. It was simply unsolvable. People guessed that Nyetian did not have time to react at all and would die under Cold-Blood's saber. In the void, a horrifying saber light bloomed. The sharp saber intent attacked towards Nyetian, cold to the extreme. Crack! In the next instant, a light sound erupted in the air. Immediately after, there was a miserable cry. Then a figure flew out. What's going on? The crowd opened their eyes wide, staring fixedly at the scene on the bloodbath, their faces filled with disbelief. Cold-Blood's saber chopped down, but he directly flew out. But Nyetian did not die, nor was he injured. Instead, he stood on the spot and scathed. His figure was like a sword, standing majestically. And in Nyetian's hand, there was a saber, precisely Cold-Blood's blade of Cold-Blood. How was this possible? The crowd stared at the saber in Nyetian's hand. The shock in their hearts could not be any greater. Everything was too strange. It was unbelievable. Obviously, it was Cold-Blood's move, but the one who was injured was himself. Even the saber in his hand was taken away by cold blood. This, Sorrow Mo and Old Chin were shocked at the same time. They stared at each other, not knowing what to say. Everything happened in an instant. Even the two of them did not see what exactly happened just now. Holding Cold Blood's blade, Nietian took a step in the air, landing beside Cold Blood. He calmly said, "Cold Blood, your saber is too bloodthirsty. Not only does it kill people, it also kills yourself. If you meet an ordinary opponent, your bloodthirsty saber intent is extremely powerful. But if you meet a true expert, your bloodthirsty saber intent will only harm you." Nietian's words were very calm, because he was only stating a fact. "If it's you." Cold Blood laid on the ground. His chest was pierced, blood was flowing, and he was on the verge of death. Using all the strength in his body, he said, "You are that true expert." "Yes." Nietian nodded his head and said, "If you did not use the slaughter move, we would still continue fighting. But you used the slaughter move, which caused you to die prematurely." What Nietian said was right. The reason why he could so easily defeat Cold Blood was because the latter used the slaughter move. In front of Nietian, the slaughter move was completely useless. Nietian's starry eyes could clearly sense the location of Cold Blood's real body. His attack simply could not escape Nietian's eyes. Even if Nietian did not have the starry eyes, he could still determine the location of Cold Blood's real body, because the afterimage did not have the bloodthirsty saber intent. Only the real body released the bloodthirsty saber intent. Cold Blood saber intent was very strong, but his martial body was not strong. Rashly approaching Nietian, he was destined to fail. Nietian had awakened the power of 140 billion stars in his body. His physical strength was terrifying to the extreme, and his body was strong enough to fight a 7th-grade spirit beast in close combat. Cold-blooded stabbing at him with such a sword was simply courting death. "To die in your hands, I do not feel wronged." Cold Blood was a bloodthirsty person, but his heart was unyielding. He knew that he would die, but he was not afraid. He said coldly, "Yes." Nietian nodded slightly. The corner of his mouth raised a hint of killing intent. "Indeed, you do not feel wronged. Cold Blood killed so many people. How could Nietian let him live? This kind of person, for the sake of his own path, would willfully kill innocent people. Even if he lived, he would be a demon. There was no point in keeping him alive." As the cold voice fell, Nietian's body released a wave of sword intent. The brilliance of the sword was dazzling, but it was a life-taking sword. "Don't kill him." However, at this moment, a voice suddenly fell from the sky. Then a mighty palm force descended, pressing down on Nietian. "Die." However, Nietian did not care. Cold Blood spat out a word, his body trembled, and an afterimage flew out, meeting the palm in the air. Chapter 785. Just as Nietian was about to kill Cold Blood, a majestic palm force suddenly descended above his head. However, he didn't even look at it as a sword spirit doppelganger flew out. Sword spirit doppelganger. Only a sword spirit swordsman could condense a doppelganger. That's right, in that instant, Nietian's sword Dao had advanced a level and reached the sword spirit realm. He had been stuck in the sword force realm for a long time and could advance to the sword spirit realm at any time. The cold-blooded slash just now had stimulated the sword intent in Nietian's body, allowing him to advance to the sword spirit realm. With the advancement of his sword Dao realm, Nietian's strength had a qualitative leap. Boom! In the void, Xiong Hui's palm pressed down and collided with Nietian's sword spirit doppelganger. The two forces directly collapsed. At the same time, Nietian's sword intent descended. After a flash of blood, Lung Shue's head was chopped off, and he died on the spot. Seeing this scene, the crowd sucked in a breath of cold air. The cold-blooded, bloodthirsty blade was actually dead. He died at the hands of Nietian. "Stinking brat, how dare you kill Lung Shue?" A figure appeared in the air, looking at Lung Shue's corpse, roaring in madness. "It's you?" Nietion suddenly raised his head and looked at the figure in the sky. It was the gray-robed old man, Elder Chun. He smiled coldly and said, Lung Shui and I are fighting to the death. We must fight to the death. Could it be that he can kill me, and I can't kill him? Brat, do you know who he is? Old Chun was furious, but he had to suppress his anger and asked in a gloomy voice. Cold-Blooded was not only the Bloody Arena's murderous blade, but also a member of the Burial Blade Society. Now that Lung Shui had died in the Blood Death field, how could the members of the Burial Blade Society let the matter rest? Others might not know about the Burial Blade Society, but Old Chin knew that the Burial Blade Society was a dark organization that was even more terrifying than first-rate empires. Once the Burial Blade Society came looking for them, it would be hard to explain to the Bloody Death field. No matter who he is, as long as he stands on the arena of blood, he will die. Isn't that what you said? Nietion smiled faintly and replied coldly. You. Elder Chun was speechless because of Nietion. He felt that there was a huge stone on his chest, and it was hard for him to breathe. Nietion smiled again and said in a cold tone, But you, as a member of the Blood Death Ground, openly intervened in the blood thread competition. Isn't this against the rules of the Blood Death Ground? Little brat, Being questioned by Nietion, Master Chin's face turned red, and he was so angry that he almost spat out blood. At this moment, the crowd came to their senses and started discussing. Old Chun is a member of the Blood Death Ground, yet he is interfering in the Blood Death battle. Isn't this inappropriate? That's right, the people of the Blood Death Ground have violated the rules of the Blood Death Ground. What should we do? What else can we do? He's from the Blood Arena. Don't tell me you still want to kill him. The crowd spoke one after another. It was very sarcastic. Hearing the crowd's words, Master Chin's old face became even uglier. At this time, Nietion's gaze turned slightly cold, and he provoked. Old thing, you appeared in the Blood Death Ground now. Does it mean that you're also in the Blood Death Ground? Therefore, there are only two paths in front of you. Either you die in the Blood Death Ground, where you fight all 25 battles and win your freedom. Impudent. Master Chun was completely infuriated, and he roared, I am a deacon of the Blood Death Ground. How can I be the same as those slaves? Oh, Nietion pondered and said, So this is the rule of the Blood Death Ground. You're just saying it for others to hear, right? Little brat, don't try to argue with me. Master Chin was about to go crazy because of Nietion. His body trembled in the air, and his eyes emitted a malicious light. At this time, Mo Yoshang's silhouette slowly descended. His gaze swept across the crowd, and upon seeing the raging emotions of the crowd, he rolled his eyes and said, Old Chun, you have indeed violated the rules of the Blood Death Arena by interfering in the Blood Death Arena. How about this? You will fight the last battle with Nietion. Between the two of you, only one can live. Young master, this. Master Chen looked at Mo Yoshang with a face of astonishment. Just now, it was clearly Mo Yoshang who asked him to make a move, but now he pushed all the blame to him. This was too ruthless. Nietion glanced at Mo Yoshang. This fellow was really sinister and vicious. This last battle would determine whether Nietion could walk out of the Blood Death Ground, and he actually arranged for Master Chun to go up. The latter was a 9th-level Heaven Evolution martial artist. Moreover, this way, the crowd's anger could also be appeased. It was really killing two birds with one stone. But this would make things difficult for Master Chun. Good. The crowd heard Mo Yoshang's decision, and they all applauded. In the past, they had only seen Master Chun flaunting his prowess in the Blood Death Ground. Today, they could see him personally fight. This was an unprecedented event. Master Chun, you don't have any objections, right? Mo Yoshang looked at Master Chun with a gloomy gaze, and he spoke plainly, still wearing a polite expression. This old servant understands. Master Chin's face turned purple, but he could only nod and reply respectfully. Good. Mo Yoshang smiled faintly, and his cold gaze swept across Nietion. He said loudly, The last battle begin. Nietion's strength had exceeded Mo Yoshang's expectations, but he did not believe that Nietion could be Master Chen's match. After all, Master Chun was a 9th-level Heaven Evolution martial artist. In the Blood Death ground, Nietion's final battle had begun. Master, this old fellow's origin spirit is a little strange. From within the chaotic original coffin, the corpse demon lord's voice sounded, reminding Nietion. Nietion nodded slightly. He detected it too. Master Chin's palm earlier exuded a dark aura, full of oppression, directly destroying one of Nietion's sword spirit doppelgangers. Stinking brat, to be able to die at Ai's hands, this is your honor, Master Chin said sinisterly. His expression became calm again, his entire body releasing ice-cold, killing intent. Just as he spoke, an invisible force slowly extended in the air, enveloping toward Nietion. Sealing power, Nietion detected something, his gaze involuntarily tightening. That invisible force in the air was clearly some kind of sealing power. He did not expect that this gray-robed old man could actually still use sealing power. Could it be that he was also a sealer? Nietion probed with his divine sense, and indeed discovered that the other party's mental strength actually reached as high as level 60. Level 60 mental strength. It was simply impossible for ordinary martial artists to achieve. Without a doubt, the gray-robed old man was a sealer. It was extremely likely that he was a Tier 6 sealer. Tier 6 sealers, to say that they were strong, they were not weak either. At least in the Sumeru world, they were considered very powerful sealers. The most terrifying aspect of a sealer was that as long as he was given any opportunity in battle, he could instantly seal the opponent's essence meridian. This Master Chun was very cunning, actually secretly releasing sealing power, wanting to trick Nietion. But sadly, Nietion's mental strength was extremely powerful, coupled with the starry sky eyes. How could he not detect the sealing power? The moment the sealing power made contact with Nietion, Senior Chin's expression froze, and he couldn't utter a word for a long time. Your essence meridian. Only after a full dozen seconds did Master Chin react, his voice trembling, shocked until he could not speak.